Dev Anand and his song Mai Zindagi ka Saath Nibhata Chala Gaya from Hum Dono. This used to come almost every Sunday on Rangoli.
It's actually the philosophy of his life. He followed that.
देव आनंद के साथ जो मैं एक शब्द खास तौर पर अटैच करूंगी वो है शौकी। और बहुत ही कम मेल एक्टर्स हैं या कलाकार हैं जिनके साथ आप ये टर्म अटैच कर सकते हैं।
He was making films more for his unit and his crew so that काम चलता रहे।
You know, that is one thing to learn from this man. A life well lived.
एक्चुअली मैं वो गाना जब सुनती थी तो मुझे आई एम नॉट जोकिंग, मुझे ये लगता था कि मेरा नाम आशा थी।
हिंदी स्क्रीन में एक्शन करने के लिए जब हीरो खड़ा होता है तो ही स्टैंड्स अपराइट। ये हीरो जब खड़ा होता है तो ये झुक जाता है।
Yes, absolutely. हर फिल्म में। और पता है हम हंस रहे हैं प्यार से, हमें उन पे प्यार आ रहा है स्वामी जी।
एक्चुअली प्यार से।
असली नाम जॉनी, नकली भी जॉनी।
You're listening to Dime a Dozen Films podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Dime a Dozen Films podcast. Hello Sandeep, hello Ashuji, hello Sohani.
Hello everybody. Hello Sohani and Sandeep, and it's great to be here again.
हेलो एवरीवन।
Hello everyone. Hi Nalini ji, Ashu ji, Swani.
हेलो।
I hope everybody's had a good day.
यस,
As good as it can get.
Yes.
या
You're sounding like Jack Nicholson now.
Am I?
You know that film, As Good As It Gets? Our favorite film.
Yeah, correct. What a lovely film it is.
What a film, yeah.
Yeah.
And hello to our lovely listeners and our regular listeners and those who keep sending us lovely messages. Welcome to this podcast. Today we are all gathered to pay our humble tribute to the most charming, always friendly, most energetic, always smiling, forever youthful in his head and heart, the darling of millions, a star in the true sense of the word, Mr. Dev Anand, or Dev SAAB as he was often called. Though he much preferred to be addressed just as Dev. Had he been alive today, he would have turned 100 on 26 September. Dharam Dev Pishorimal Anand, as he was named by his parents, worked in the film industry for over 6 decades as an actor, a writer, director, and producer. He always encouraged new talent in practically every film created by his banner, Navketan Films, and is known for keeping his promises that he made to people, some deserving, others perhaps not. A thorough gentleman, and what a lovely human being. Love you, Dev Saab. And we're all here to talk about our love for him, his films, but more about our love for him as a person. So, I'm going to start with Sandeep Padi. Sandeep, if you go back to your childhood or whenever you first connected with a film which was about Dev Anand or saw a film or became aware of somebody like him, do you have any memories to share about that? Because I really want you to go back. We are going to talk about his films. We are going to talk about what we liked about them. And of course, there are some that we didn't like. But since we are celebrating this human being, I just would love to hear from you about what you thought. And if you remember, what was the first time you saw him on the big screen? Do share with us.
First of all, I'm very glad that we all got together to discuss Dev Anand. Needs to be discussed for his countless contribution to the Hindi film industry, which we will talk about in details. But since you asked me about my first memory, right? Yes, I have very distinct and clear memory of Dev Saab, and that is not on the big screen, of course, but this was early 90s. And so when I think of him, even now, the first picture that comes to my mind is the small black and white Orson TV. Some of the listeners from a certain vintage will understand what a black and white Orson TV was.
Yes.
And Dev Anand and his song, Mai Zindagi ka Saath Nibhata Chala Gaya from Hum Dono.
Oh.
And this used to come almost every Sunday on Rangoli. And Rangoli if I'm remembering is right, we used to come around 7:15 or around that time, early
Yes,
morning.
7:15 in the morning, right, Sandeep?
Yeah, around that time it used to come. And the moment that song played was about the time I would wake up. So I mean, the very distinct memories of him, that swag, running around, and of course, uh, the composition and Mohammed Rafi's voice helps. But as a kid, you don't see anything beyond what you see on the screen, right? So it was Devanand looking like $1 million and strutting around without a care for the world, with a cigarette in his hand, and uh, हर फिक्र को धुएं में उड़ाता चला गया, like the song rightly goes. So that is my first distinct memory of watching Devanand on the small screen at home. And then with age, whenever this song or some other song of Devanand used to come, or there would be these movies, Didi again is to be thanked for telecasting these older films from 50s, 60s, and all back then. Then I started knowing about this person, and this was again pre-internet era. So this was normally from stories told, by my parents or other relatives around the house. They would say, "Yeah, Devanand was, I mean, you don't make stars like him anymore." There's a story, the Devanand Suraya story, uh, that popular urban legend which Devanand himself had to, uh, debunk in his biography, among other places, that he was not allowed to step out of his house in a dressed in black, which is a very common urban legend in uh, in India. I think it still is. A lot of people of a certain vintage still believe that story to be true.
After Kalapani, he was not allowed to do
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
So all of these things just kept entering my head, because everybody around me used to talk, and I grew up in a family that loved film, loved to discuss films. So all these informations kept piling into my head, and that's how my entire impression of Devanand was formed. So yeah, those were my initial memories. This particular song from Hum Dono.
And Sandeep, it's so befitting that you've started this podcast with that song, because not only is that the philosophy that we would all like to follow and we fail, but Dev Saab in real life, I mean, if you've read what he's written himself, his autobiography, it's actually the philosophy of his life. He followed that.
Yes, very true. And on the occasion of his centenary, I wrote a piece about him, and there was no other way I could end that piece. It had to end by, because we talk about his later filmography and the box office, whatever the results of those films, whether they worked or not, and all of that, right? And quality of those films being immaterial, I have not seen those films myself, apart from one or two probably. But to understand Devanand, you need to understand, or to understand why he made those films, and he kept on making films. You need to understand that this is his philosophy. It is not just Sahir writing for him and Mohammed Rafi giving his voice. They did that, yes, beautifully, but Devanand actually lived that philosophy. मैं हर फिक्र को धुएं धुएं में उड़ाता चला गया, मैं जिंदगी का साथ निभाता चला गया. He did that all the way to his grave. I mean, that's a life well lived.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So much to learn there, Sandeep. And I wanted to just engage my listeners here that Sandeep Padi and also Sohani Sharma and Ashutrika, the three of them write blogs on cinema. I have read this blog that Sandeep has written and I commented on it as well. It was beautifully written. Sohani writes on cinema. Ashuji has a blog. So I would urge our listeners to read what they write, because they are cinephiles in the true sense of the word. Their love for cinema just shines through in every word or line that they write. There's also criticism. They're all honest, their feelings. So I would like to plug that in here, that three of my co-panelists write beautifully about cinema. So I think you all should follow them. Maybe later when I put this up, I would add those handles. Their blog handles, you call them, is it, Ashuji?
Yeah, yeah.
I would add that so that more listeners can read what they have to say. I recently read something very beautifully written by Suhani, and I messaged her about it. And Sandeep's blogs, whenever he puts them out, I always read. Ashuji's blogs come, I think, every Thursday, if I'm not mistaken, Ashuji.
Yes.
Yes. And I would encourage everybody, lovers of cinema. You have people who talk about cinema on Diamond Dozen Films podcast, and you also have people who write about it. So it's a double whammy. So thank you so much, Sandeep, for that. That was a fabulous way to start the podcast. Couldn't have started any better. Suhani, over to you for your first impressions of this absolutely marvelous man called Dev Anand.
इंटरेस्टिंगली नलिनी जी, मेरी यादें बिल्कुल वही यादें हैं जिसका जिक्र संदीप ने किया, क्योंकि हम 90s के दौरान पली पली बड़ी हुई जनरेशन है
जी।
तो और मेरा सिनेमा की तरफ जितना लगाव है, जितना प्यार है, वो सब मुझे मेरे माता पिता से मिला है। और देव आनंद एक ऐसे कलाकार थे जिनसे शायद मेरी पूरी फैमिली उनको बहुत पसंद करती थी, बहुत प्यार करती थी। और मुझे अपना बचपन याद आता है, और मुझे ये याद आता है कि देव आनंद को शायद मैंने उनकी पहली कुछ झलकियां रंगोली में ही देखी होंगी, रंगोली या चित्रहार में। और देव आनंद के साथ जो मैं एक शब्द खास तौर पर अटैच करूंगी, वो है शोखी।
हाँ।
और बहुत ही कम ऐसे मेल एक्टर्स हैं या कलाकार हैं जिनके जिनके साथ आप ये टर्म अटैच कर सकते हैं, और जिन पर ये बहुत ही प्यारा लगता था। तो संदीप ने जिक्र किया मैं जिंदगी का साथ निभाता चला गया, लेकिन मुझे याद है ये दिल ना होता बेचारा,
हाँ।
और जिसमें वो पूरे गैंग ऑफ गर्ल्स को छेड़ रहे हैं और उन्हें परेशान कर रहे हैं, अलग अलग तरीकों से उनके रास्ते में आ रहे हैं। और दूसरा गाना है अपना दिल तो आवारा, एंड देन देयर इज शोखियों में घोला जाए फूलों का शबाब। तो ये सारा उनका एक जो खिलंदड़पन है, और उनकी जो एक शोखी है, एक शरारत है, वो इतनी प्यारी थी। क्योंकि आप देखिए, अब आज के लेंस में हम अगर वोक लेंस में या पॉलिटिकल लेंस में देखें, तो माना जनाब में पुकारा नहीं इज ईव टीजिंग सॉन्ग, ही इज टीजिंग नूतन। बट जब वो कर रहे हैं, वो इतने प्यारे लग रहे हैं उसमें, दैट यू विल फॉरगिव हिम फॉर दैट। तो और ये बहुत ही कम ऐसे कलाकार हैं जो ये मे बी टीज भी करेंगे एक्ट्रेस को, हीरोइन को ऑन स्क्रीन, बट यू विल नॉट गेट ऑफेंडेड व्हाइल वाचिंग इट। आपको शायद हंसी ही आएगी। तो मुझे मेरे साथ देव आनंद की ये शुरुआत की यादें हैं। एंड ऑफ कोर्स जिस तरीके से हम बड़े होते गए और फिर हमने उनकी बाकी फिल्मोग्राफी डिस्कस की, तो मुझे याद है कि मेरे मम्मी पापा का जो फेवरेट ऑल टाइम रोमांटिक क्लासिक सॉन्ग है इज तेरे मेरे सपने अब एक रंग है, जो वो हमेशा एक दूसरे के लिए गाते हैं। और गाइड जब मैं अपने फैमिली के साथ देख रही थी, तो गाइड की उनकी परफॉर्मेंस इतनी ज्यादा पसंद थी मेरे फादर को, जो कि उतने ज्यादा फिल्म्स वो देखते भी नहीं, लेकिन कुछ कुछ खास परफॉर्मेंसेस हैं और खास कहानियां हैं जो जिनके बारे में वो बहुत ही फॉन्डनेस से बात करते हैं। तो उसका एक सीन है जब देव आनंद का जो किरदार है राजू, वो बहुत ही हताश है, क्योंकि उसके और रोजी के बीच में दूरियां बहुत बढ़ गई है, और वो अकेले शराब पी रहे हैं बैठ के। और वो कहते हैं कि बातें करने के लिए इतना तरस गया था, वो जो एक डायलॉग है। और वो कहते हैं कि जिंदगी भी एक नशा है मेरे दोस्त, जब चढ़ता है तो पूछो मत कि क्या आलम होता है, और जब उतरता है तो एंड देयर द सॉन्ग स्टार्ट्स, दिन ढल जाए। मैंने बहुत सालों से गाइड देखी नहीं ये, क्योंकि मेरे फादर ने इस सीन को इतने पैशनेटली डिस्क्राइब किया था कि वो मेरी ये दिस इज कमिंग फ्रॉम समवेयर माय बैक फ्रॉम माय मेमोरी, कहीं से तो ये यादें आज मेरे पास आ रही हैं। और जब मैं बड़ी हुई और सबसे बड़ी बात है कि देव आनंद इतने खूबसूरत आदमी थे ना. He was
Hmm.
so beautiful कि even when I was a kid, I got attracted to him seeing on screen the male beauty he personified. He was so beautiful, so mischievous, the little twinkle in his eyes, and his mischievous smile. और तो वो जब वो एक फेज आया कि देव आनंद की तरफ उनको एक आइडलाइज करने का या उनको रोमांटिसाइज करने का, तो उनकी जो सारी फिल्में देखी वो याद है. एंड देन आई ऑल्सो रियलाइज दैट ही वॉज so polished. He was very English in his behavior, in his mannerisms, and in the way he treated people. And he was an absolutely confident person and an artist with a spine who time to time stood for his beliefs, never backed down before anyone. And whatever he did with great confidence. हम मजाक उड़ा सकते हैं आखिर की उनकी फिल्मों का, लेकिन he was very sure about his films. And when he wrote about those films, जो आज हम शायद उनको ट्रैश की कैटेगरी में डाल दें, लेकिन जब वो उस फिल्म के बारे में लिखते हैं तो आप यकीन नहीं कर सकते कि ये वही फिल्म के बारे में लिख रहे हैं जो उन्होंने डायरेक्ट की है, क्योंकि ही वाज सो कॉन्फिडेंट about his story. So he was a man of many talents, and moreover, he was a very confident, very free-spirited man. And it's very difficult to find a person like him, an artist like him. And he really believed in storytelling, in the power of storytelling. और वो बिल्कुल भी मतलब he was in the last decade of his life he was spinning stories out of real meetings and real people. मतलब I'm sure आपने romancing with life पढ़ी है नलिनी जी, as we were discussing. उनकी लास्ट फिल्म में जो कुछ फिल्में हैं वो तो बिल्कुल चांस मीटिंग्स और कभी किसी से मिल लिया, किसी की कोई कहानी सुन ली, उससे उससे उठा के उन्होंने वो फिल्में बनाई है. हम भले ही वो आज वो हास्यपद लगे, लेकिन he was a storyteller in truest sense. So his contribution to cinema is immense. And अभी उनके 100 साल पूरे होने पर जो फिल्म हेरिटेज फाउंडेशन ने एक उनका फिल्म फेस्टिवल ऑर्गेनाइज किया था, उसमें मैंने जूल थीफ देखी. एंड मजे की बात ये है नलिनी जी एंड एवरीवन, आशु जी एंड संदीप, कि हमने अभी तक उनकी फिल्में छोटे स्क्रीन पर देखी थी, क्योंकि थिएटर पे देखने का कभी मौका ही नहीं मिला. लेकिन जब मैंने उनको थिएटर में देखा, आई थिंक जूल थीफ के समय ही मस्ट बी अराउंड इन हिज 40s.
Must be, yes.
Yeah, and he looks so handsome and he looks so stylish. The choicest of his wardrobe, जिस
Yes.
तरह के कपड़े उन्होंने पहने और उनका attitude, उनका swagger. I found myself getting attracted towards him immensely, and I realized कि actually उस दौर की महिलाओं के मन में क्या एक फीलिंग आती होगी
जी.
देव आनंद को देख के. This I realized when I watched him on big screen, and it was absolutely a gem of an experience.
Right. That's beautiful. Suhani, you actually encapsulated the persona of this absolutely lovely. I keep saying lovely, for lack of other adjectives. He was a beautiful man, no doubt. And since you brought up Jewel Thief, recently when I met Anju Mendru,
Yeah,
very recently, just after the festival got over. And in fact, I
yeah,
was asking her क्यों नहीं आए, because वो festival के पहले ही मैंने बोला था कि आप आ जाओ. तो मैंने उनसे बस यही पूछा था कि आपके experiences बताओ. क्या हुआ था when they were shooting in Sikkim and all. There is not a single person, Suhani, who has a word which is derogatory about this man. That is something, that is a life well lived. Nobody
true.
has anything negative to say about this person. She also said it was so beautiful, everything was so fine. She was about 14 years old and whatever. And how she was looked after, on the sets of Jewel Thief. How Goldie looked after her, how Dev Saab looked after her. Everybody has a kind word. Even somebody like Nasiruddin Shah, who is quite cussed when it comes to the film industry. I remember those
Yeah,
interviews, which Sandeep Ashuji will definitely remember. There's one person, there are two people actually that he has kind words for. One is Shami Kapoor and the other is Dev Anand. And
yeah,
I remember Nasir साहब saying also, उनके लिए तो कुछ भी, you know, अगर वो मुझे बोलते कि खंबे की तरह यहाँ खड़े हो जाओ तो मैं खड़े हो जाता, बिकॉज देवानंद साहब के लिए कुछ भी. हेमा मालिनी भी यही बोलती हैं, जीनत अमान भी यही बोलती हैं, सब, everyone. He's most gracious, and like I said in the introduction, he keeps his promises. A man, like you said, with spine, because he was the only person in the film industry who vociferously opposed the emergency when it happened.
Yeah.
And that made him form his political party and everything. So, like you said, Sohani, a man of so many talents, so many talents. And जितना भी हम चाहें कि उनकी बात की फिल्में, जो शायद संदीप को ये बात पता होगा, आशु जी को तो 100% पता होगा, कि वो अव्वल नंबर शायद पहली फिल्म ऐसी थी ना जिससे उन्होंने वैसी वाली फिल्में बनाने लगे थे,
हाँ.
जिसमें आमिर खान ने एक्टिंग की थी. आफ्टर दैट देयर वाज अ डाउनहिल thing, but all those people who worked with him and only good words for him, you know, that is
And
amazing.
he kept on pulling in some of the very talented actors, even in the, you know, the very substandard of his films, like actors like Baman Irani and
Yes,
all the superstars of this generation. They kept on working with him just for
yes,
purely for love for Dev Anand.
yes, absolutely. तो आपकी यादें रंगोली से जुड़ी हैं और चित्रहार से जुड़ी हैं, संदीप की भी वहीं से जुड़ी हैं. अब मैं आशु जी के पास जाती हूँ. आशु जी, आपकी यादें देव साहब के बारे में जरा शेयर कीजिए ना हमारे साथ.
अह, देव साहब के बारे में, मतलब मैं तो छोटा था जब उनकी फिल्में देखनी शुरू की. उनकी फिल्में, मतलब मैंने हर किस्म की फिल्में देखी है उनकी. मतलब हम लोग तो ऑफ कोर्स बात कर रहे हैं, गाइड हुआ, जून थीफ हुआ, जानी मेरा नाम, ये सब क्लासिक फिल्में तो देखी. पर उसके बाद वाली जो फिल्में हैं, चाहे वो हरे रामा हरे कृष्णा हो, बनारसी बाबू हो, मतलब अव्वल नंबर तो नहीं देखी. आई डेंट सी अव्वल नंबर, आई डेंट सी सेंसर, आई डेंट सी ऑल दोज अदर काइंड ऑफ फिल्म्स. बट मैंने उनकी इस किस्म की फिल्में जिसमें जीनत के साथ उन्होंने बहुत काम किया. फिर जो टीना मुनीम की पहली फिल्म थी,
देश परदेश और मनपसंद.
हाँ, देश परदेश मनपसंद, दोनों देखी मैंने. बट मुझे याद है, मतलब उस वक्त ना काफी सारे लोग जो थे वो शम्मी कपूर के फैन भी हुआ करते थे, और काफी डिवाइडेड था शम्मी कपूर का फैन होना और देव साहब का फैन होना. हालांकि तीन टॉप एक्टर्स उस वक्त अगर नाम लिए जाते हैं तो देव साहब थे, राज कपूर थे, और दिलीप कुमार थे. इन तीनों के दे वर द टॉप थ्री एक्टर्स दैट यू कुड थिंक ऑफ एट दैट पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम. लोग बोलते थे कि राज साहब वाज अ रियली गुड लुकिंग. बोलते क्या मतलब थे, ही वाज अ रियली रियली गुड लुकिंग मैन. बट द सेम कुड बी सेड अबाउट देव साहब. Dev sir
Yes.
was really good, really confident. What a lovely smile, and the puff of the hair with which he used to part the hair on the head. इनके गाने, मतलब राज जी के गाने कमाल होते थे, देव साहब के गाने भी कमाल होते. ऑफकोर्स दिलीप साहब के भी गाने बहुत अच्छे होते थे. बट मुझे आज भी याद है, लिबर्टी सिनेमा है मेट्रो के पीछे.
हम्म.
इट्स अ मैमथ थिएटर. वहां पे फिल्म लगी तीन देवियां, और हम
हाँ.
सब दोस्त वगैरह देखने गए. तीन देवियां उधर देखने गए. जो मैंने वहां पे जोश देखा है लोगों का, और उसके गाने तो सारे ही कमाल के गाने थे. और जब गाने बजने शुरू होते थे तो ऑडियंसेस, पहले जमाने में लोग जो है बाहर निकल जाते थे गाना गा, जब आता था तो सिगरेट वगैरह पीने, यहाँ पे खड़े होकर के गाते थे और नाचते थे साथ में थिएटर के अंदर.
हम्म.
ये एक जोश था. मैं तो तीन देवियां की बात कर रहा हूँ जिसमें तीन हीरोइनें थी देव साहब के साथ में. और तेरे मेरे सपने, मतलब मैं क्या नाम लूं, कितनी फिल्में नाम लूं, हर फिल्मों में उनके गाने कमाल होते थे. और फिर मैंने उनको, मतलब आपको समझ में आएगा कि लोग उनको कितना प्यार करते थे या कितनी इज्जत उनकी करते थे, कि रॉन्डेवू जो था प्रोग्राम सिमी गरेवाल का,
जी.
so she would have all kinds of people who would come, and she would speak with them with quite a decent amount of authority, simply because she's fairly uh, senior in the film trade. But when you see her speaking with Dev Saab, you can see an air of reverence
हम्म.
in her voice, in the way she asked questions, in the way she sort of spoke with him. And you're right. And yes, जैसे सुहानी बोलती, he was confident. The way he projected himself, the way he spoke, the way he and his English, the command of it. So उस वक्त में इस किस्म की इंग्लिश बोलने वाले लोग बहुत ज्यादा लोग नहीं हुआ करते थे. बट इनकी इनकी अंग्रेजी हो या उर्दू हो, हिंदी तो होती थी, बट उस वक्त सारे जितने एक्टर्स थे उनका उर्दू जानना बहुत ज्यादा जरूरी था. तो उन सारों को मतलब उसमें चाहे फिर उनका उनके बात करने का लहजा हो या उनका प्रोजेक्शन हो, थॉट हो, वर्ड्स हो, वो तो लिखते भी उर्दू में थे उस वक्त. Some of the things that he was very popular in the industry was, so people remember Mahatma Gandhi for the way, one of the various things, one of the way was the speed with which Mahatma Gandhi walked. He used to walk very fast. Dev Saab also was known as a person who could not stand or walk slow. He would walk so fast that his entire team would want to catch up with him. And they would say कि यार इस उम्र में भी इतनी तेज चल देंगे जिसका कोई हिसाब नहीं है. He was really really quick. And मैंने ऐसा सुना था इंडस्ट्री में इस तरीके की बातें होती थी कि उनको फिल्म बनाने की कोई जरूरत नहीं थी. There came a point of time where he had enough. ऊपर वाले ने इज्जत भी दी, शोहरत भी थी, नाम भी दिया, पैसा भी दिया, सब कुछ दिया. और उनको अब वो मकाम हासिल कर लिया कि अब फिल्म बनाए ना बनाए कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता, लेकिन वो फिर भी साल में एक आध फिल्म बनाने की कोशिश करते थे. और वो बनाते ही थे, लेकिन इंडस्ट्री में इस तरीके की उस वक्त की बात निकलती थी कि ही वॉज मेकिंग फिल्म मोर फॉर हिज यूनिट एंड हिज क्रू, सो दैट काम चलता रहे. बिकॉज क्या है, मैं उस दौर की बात कर रहा हूँ जहां पे टेलीविजन नहीं था, ओटीटी नहीं था, टीवी सीरियल्स नहीं चलते थे. जो काम फिल्म इंडस्ट्री में लोग करते थे वो फिल्मों के साथ ही चलते थे. और अगर फिल्में चलती तो उनको काम मिलता, अगर फिल्में नहीं चलती तो उतने काम जो है वो बंद हो जाते. एक फिल्म जब शुरू होती है या एक फिल्म जब बनती है तो लगभग 1000 लोगों के घर चलते हैं. उनका ये था कि मैं अगर फिल्में बनाना बंद कर दूंगा तो मेरे लोगों का क्या होगा. तो he would make films more for his team than for himself, because he didn't need to make films at all. He didn't want to do it. He just didn't. He didn't need to do it because everything that a man can dream for, ask for, was all there. और देव साहब का एक और चीज मैं बोलना चाहूंगा कि आप जब होते हैं ना कि when you're a fan of somebody, when you imagine what kind of a person he would be, because you never met him, आप उनको मिले नहीं, चाहे वो हीरोइन हो, हीरोज हो, बहुत बार आप मिलने के बाद में हताश हो जाते हैं कि यार मैंने इस किस्म की कल्पना की थी, आई इमेजिन दिस अबाउट दिस पर्सन, और ये तो कुछ और ही निकला, कुछ और ही, ही समथिंग एल्स. बट देव साहब ऐसे थे कि अगर आप उनके फैन हैं तो आप उनको मिलने के बाद उनके और बड़े फैन हो जाएंगे. That is the kind of persona he had. That's the kind of grace he had. That's the kind of humility also that he had. When he met people, they would be enamored by him. और आपने जितना नाम लिया कि ये सारे लोग काम करने को तैयार थे उनके साथ, मैं बताऊं ऑफ द रीसेंट लॉट जो सबसे बड़ा फैन देव साहब का है, और वो बोलता था लिटरली, ही सेड कि देव साहब खड़े रहने को बोल देंगे तो मैं खड़ा रह जाऊंगा, मुझे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता है. वो जैकी श्रॉफ. जैकी दादा was is a huge fan of Dev Anand. And उस वक्त हम लोगों को लगता था कि देव साहब used to model his performance, his acting on who's the hero of McCann as Gold, मैं नाम भूल रहा हूँ. Gregory Peck. So they would उस वक्त पे लोग जो हैं वो देव साहब को ग्रेगरी पैक के साथ में कंपेयर करते थे in terms of the look on screen, the performance, the way he would exude himself on screen. देव साहब के किस्से भी बड़े थे, देव साहब को चाहने वाले भी बहुत थे. The fairer sex probably liked him so much it's not funny. He was a superstar in his own right and a man who never aged. He was always young. That is Dev Saab.
Yes. Ashuji, you spoke about the puff, his hairstyle. I just wanted to tell you that one of my brothers, I have two brothers, and one of my brothers always kept the puff after seeing Dev Saab. Or Abhi though, of course, he lives in the US and everything, and he still tries to make that puff, and we make so much fun of him. And he had a kind of a resemblance because to Dev Saab. So, and the other brother used to make his hairstyle as Dilip Kumar. That is the craze that people have for these stars, you know.
One of the earlier films that I saw, जो डबल रोल हुआ करती थी, वो मैंने हम दोनों देखी थी और हम और शाम देखी थी. और मुझे उस वक्त पे तो समझ में नहीं आता था कि दो एक्टर्स, एक ही एक्टर प्ले कर रहा है दोनों कैरेक्टर. ऑफ कोर्स वो समझ में आ ही जाता था, बट उसके लिए कितनी मेहनत लगती थी, कैसे दोनों कैरेक्टर्स के बीच में सेपरेशन क्रिएट करना था और क्या चीजें थी. मतलब हम दोनों, मेरे फादर की फेवरेट हुआ करती थी और वो बहुत अक्सर गाते थे कि मैं जिंदगी का साथ निभाता चला, व्हाटएवर. So उसमें he would sing that song quite frequently, but I think he played the captain and the major in that film.
Yes.
And the major had a mustache, and the captain was clean shaven, and he was deputed to go back to my house and look after my wife, is what the major had said. And उस वक्त वो कहानी अपने आप में इतनी यूनिक लगती थी, इतनी अच्छी कहानी लगती थी, and at the same time commercial थी film. So yes, Dev Saab, there are lots of memories with Dev Saab. उनका जो घर है, it used to be a landmark. उनका ऑफिस जो नवकेतन फिल्म्स जो खीरा नगर में है, that used to be a landmark. मतलब हम लोग इंडस्ट्री में तो बोलते थे कि नवकेतन का जो ऑफिस है ना, उसके सामने ये जगह है, वहां पे मिलना है. This is how it used to be spoken about. So yes, lots of things about Dev Saab comes to life when you speak about him.
Yeah. You know, my childhood is full of memories. With your permission, I would like to share my personal anecdotes about him. Sandeep, Suhani, Ashuji.
Please.
Yes.
Please, Nandini.
So, thanks to my mother, the beacon of light in my family, like Suhani said, that she owes her parents the gratitude for making her aware of cinema. My mother was that beacon, you know. So I was very small. I must have been 4 or 5 years old or whatever, maybe even younger. But the memory is so stark. Just before this podcast began, I was sharing this with Ashuji, that my mother was friends with him, but she was closer to Kalpana Karthik, who was known as Mona Singha, and they went back a long way. So at one point in time, we were all called to Iris Park. His address is 2 Iris Park. And all of us, mommy took all of us. So there were 2 brothers, 5 girls, our sisters. And at one meeting, my father was also there. And the second meeting, my father was not there. We were invited for tea and snacks. So I was running around like this. I was excited. Dev Anand ke ghar ja rahe hain, Dev Anand ke ghar ja rahe hain, and all that. And Kalpana Karthik ji, whenever I used to look at her, she always kind of reminded me of Sophia Loren or those Iranian women because of the heavy eye makeup she had. You know, she was so stunning with that eye makeup. We used to keep staring at her, you know. So we were sitting, all of us went inside, and then Kalpana ji and my mother, they were talking. She was talking to my older sisters, my brothers. We were just watching this whole thing. Then the chai came, the biscuits came. फिर हमारे लिए चाय बनाई, बिस्किट खाए. तब तक देव साहब, उनका ऑफिस भी एक कमरे में था वहीं पे आइरिस पार्क में. वो बाहर नहीं निकले थे. उनको पता था कि हम आ रहे हैं. एंड फिर हम लोग बातें कर रहे थे और ये मुझे कभी नहीं भूलता, बिकॉज आई रिमेम्बर मैं अपने सोफे से मैं एकदम खड़ी हो गई थी एंड आई बिकेम स्टिफ because from within the house we could hear this voice, this unmistakable voice. And Suhani, Sandeep, Ashuji, he just walked in that manner, and he walked in and said, hello, Mrs. Ratnam, lovely, welcome. Oh, hello, hello, Vimla, hello. And he said to all of us, he hugged my sisters, and I was just staring at this man. And then he spoke to my brothers. He did not sit on a chair. I remember this. He just kept walking up and down and talking to everybody and making everybody feel at home. And he told us he won't be able to join us, but, you know, please go ahead. And I was staring at this man. And like you say, Suhani, he's beautiful. And even at that young age, you feel attracted to him. And that's exactly what was happening to me. But imagine my sisters. They were much older. And they both had brought their little autograph books. So obviously can't go without him signing. So he came, I remember this, the sofa was huge. He came from behind both my sisters and he put one arm around one, he put the other arm around the other, and he said something, some sweet nothings to them. And they fished out their autograph books and they gave it to him. And he kept looking, couldn't find a pen. Then a pencil was fished out. I can't remember from where. The color of the pencil was yellow. It was a scented pencil, as I got to know later. I remember him telling my sisters he's very sorry, he can't find a pen. So he took their autograph book, took their names, signed, lovely, signed the thing. And then somebody from the office came and called him away. So he left. And the rest of the time we were sitting with his wife. Now, after he left, the older of my older sisters had taken the pencil from his hand. Oh, he must have handed it over to her. And she took it and she grabbed it and she kept it close to her heart. Over there in Dev Anand's house, there's a scuffle started between both my sisters. दोनों एक दूसरे से झगड़ने लगे. Pencil मैं रखूंगी, pencil मैं रखूंगी, pencil मैं रखूंगी. You know? Oh my goodness, I can never forget it. तो वहीं पे ना जो बड़ी वाली दीदी थी मेरी, उन्होंने पेंसिल को 2 टुकड़ों में तोड़ा. And then they fought over कौन सा टुकड़ा कौन रखेगा, you know? कौन सा टुकड़ा कौन
I don't blame them, Nalini
Oh
ji.
gosh, oh gosh. I can't tell you. It felt like, so honey, it felt like this was somebody we've known all our lives. You know, that is the अपनापन जो इनसे आता है ना देव साहब से. अच्छा, तो ये तो हो गया मेरी बचपन की बात. 2 बार या 3 बार हम लोग आइरिस पार्क गए थे. उसके बाद much later, when I was grown up and I was working and everything, this is very beautiful, this whole thing. And my mother was not here. She'd gone to the US, and a friend of mine, a very close friend of mine who used to be in boarding school with me, she decided to come to Bombay for something. And then she came and she met me and she says, "Mujhe Dev Anand se milna hai." She was a Punjabi kudi. And she says, "Mujhe to milna hai, milana hi padega," because she knew my mother's connection with that family. So I said, "Oh, but mummy is not here." So she says, "I don't care. You have to, before I go back to Delhi, you have to help me meet him." So you know what I did, so honey? In those days, telephone directory, ठीक है ना, उसको खोला.
Yeah.
टेलीफोन
Yeah.
डायरेक्टरी में मैंने नवकेतन फिल्म्स का एड्रेस ढूंढा.
Hmm.
वो खीरा नगर का एड्रेस है, सांता क्रूज में. वहां का लैंडलाइन नंबर है. उस लैंडलाइन नंबर पे मैंने नंबर डायल किया. And I just took a chance, you know. I dialed the number and the receiver was lifted. And guess what I heard on the other side? "Hello, Dave here." Oh, if I remember correctly, he said, wait, he said, "Hello, Dev Anand here."
Oh my God.
Can you imagine my halat? And my
Yeah,
friend was
yeah,
standing
yeah.
next to me. And I must have stuttered, I must have stammered, but I think I composed myself and I said, "Hello, Mr. Anand. My name is Nalini. I'm Mrs. Ratnam's daughter. And I have a friend here from Delhi. I don't know whether you remember my mother or not." So he says, "Yes, yes." I said, "She was very friendly with your wife. And remember, we came to Iris Park and, oh, yes, yes, yes." He remembered. Even if he didn't, he pretended to. And he said, I said, "I'm her daughter and I live in Mumbai." No, it wasn't Mumbai then. It was still Bombay. And I said,
Bombay.
Bombay. It was still Bombay. And I said, "I have this very dear friend of mine who's come from Delhi. And Mr. Anand, she would like to meet you. Is it possible?" You know what he said, Swani? He said, "Yes, come right over. Where are you?" So, you go, "Oh my goodness me." So this is okay. You know, so we were like, I was panting. She was next to me and I said, all right, whatever. We'll see you soon. Yeah, see you soon. Whatever. He put the phone down. We ran. We changed our clothes. We got a taxi and gave him the address, went to Khira Nagar. It's a very rudimentary. It was a very rudimentary office even then. It had a wooden staircase, okay, which goes up. Not ordinary looking. There was nothing flashy about his office. I remember this Punjabi kudi friend of mine, niche thi, "Acha, yeah." I'm sorry, but that's so typically Punjabi, right? So She says, yeah. I said, huh? And I was excited because, he remembered my mother, whatever, blah, blah, blah. We climbed up the stairs. And वो दरबान को ऑलरेडी बोल चुके थे कि कोई आ रही है दो हमसे मिलने, तो वो हमको डायरेक्ट, बहुत ही ऑर्डिनरी सा ऑफिस, वेरी कोजी ऑफ कोर्स. He opened the door for us, so honey.
Oh my God.
I cannot tell you. He made us sit down. He ordered tea. The tray was silver. The I think the tea cups and the thing was also, I remember, fancy. He poured the tea for us. All right. And I reminded him, and he looked at me and he was listening to me and he said, yes, 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 Mona. And yes, yes, they bonded over. Oh, yes, yes, they become very spiritual. Yes, yes. But he was all the time from the corner of his eye. So, honey, he was looking at my friend. My friend was very voluptuous. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was quite, I was quite skinny. Okay. Those were my
Yeah.
skinny days, right? And I don't think he was that interested in me, but he was looking at this girl. And then he asked, and she was like tongue tied. And he offered her a film then and there. He started.
I am not surprised,
Ah,
Nalini ji. I'm
and
not surprised.
oh gosh. And she was like, and they were flirting. There was lots of flirting going on because that's how he is. We've read his book. And it was such a joy the way he treated us. And he asked her, and she says, no, but I don't know act. Oh, no, I'll be there. I'll teach you, but you should think about it. No.
Oh my God.
No, of course, you're lovely. Stand up. Why don't you stand up? And he asked her to stand up, and she stood up. I was waiting for him to tell me to stand up. He didn't. He wasn't interested in me, sorry. So anyway, I'm telling you, I think आधे घंटे से ऊपर हम लोग बात थे. इतनी अच्छी ट्रीटमेंट देव साहब ने हमें दी ना, वो कितने सालों बाद.
He must have showered you both with compliments, I'm sure.
Yes.
नलिनी जी, किस्सा तो बहुत मजेदार था, पर मैं बताऊं उससे दूसरी मजेदार चीज और क्या थी
जी.
जिस तरीके से आपने देवानंद को मिमिक किया है ना, वो भी बहुत
True.
कमाल
True.
था।
Yeah, I was going to say you do a fine Dev Saab impression, Sohani. Nalini. Brilliant.
It's nice to hear a female do an impression of Dev Saab.
True, true.
And right down to the pauses. She got it
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
मुझे ना एक फिल्म है नलिनी जी, किशन कन्हैया में एक गाना है जिसमें माधुरी दीक्षित मिमिक करती है देव आनंद को, है अपना दिल तो आवारा
जी.
बिल्कुल मुझे वो याद आ गया.
Oh my God.
पर मुझे एक बात बताइए नलिनी जी,
जी.
पेंसिल कहाँ है?
अरे वो मेरी बहनों के वो भी अमेरिका, ऑस्ट्रिया, हम बिखर गए ना.
This is all.
बिखर गए.
This is such a piece of history, no?
Yeah.
That you have something.
Yeah.
Nalin ji, even you have touch wood, you have such fulfilling life, Nalini ji, no doubt. Acha, I would like to add something, Nalini ji.
Yes, yes.
So why I'm saying I am not surprised, because when you read his autobiography,
Yes.
it is filled with such accidental meetings and him charming out, his female fans and offering them films then and there.
Yeah.
And he was so humble, क्योंकि ये बिल्कुल एग्जैक्ट किस्सा है कि कोई उनसे मिला और उन्होंने अपना इंट्रोडक्शन दिया, एंड ही डिडंट रिमेम्बर बट ही पोलाइटली अग्रीड कि
Yeah.
हाँ मुझे याद है.
Yeah.
एंड आई थिंक अपने लेटर एज में उन्होंने डेक्कन क्वीन से ट्रेवल किया था पुणे, एंड अमंगस्ट हिज फैंस विदाउट एनी entourage and fanfare, so humbly, because he wanted to be among in the middle of his fans and his followers. And the way he writes that someone were offering them flowers and garlands and even money. People were offering him money like they offer to the gods they worship in temples. And there are so many incidences जिसमें बहुत ही कॉमन आदमियों से, लोगों से उनकी मुलाकात हुई है, लेकिन अपनी ऑटोबायोग्राफी में उन्होंने उनको इतना बढ़िया दर्जा दिया है या इतना महत्वपूर्ण एक चैप्टर दिया है. And he truly cherished the love and respect he got from his fans. And जो आपने तो बस कंफर्म कर दिया, जो उन्होंने अपनी आत्मकथा में लिखा है, आपने उसे कंफर्म कर दिया कि he was man of, he had so much love to give, and he was a flirt,
Yes,
and he was a charmer, and he was very aware of this weapon which he had, and he
absolutely.
used it, from time to time, and he had no. See, मैं ये भी इसलिए भी कहती हूँ आशु जी एंड संदीप जी की he was a man with spine and artist with spine, क्योंकि उनकी जो आत्मकथा है वो इट्स वेरी क्लोज टू रियलिटी, वेरी
Yeah.
क्लोज, क्योंकि मुझे नहीं लगता उन्होंने उन्होंने ऐसी ऐसी बातों का जिक्र किया है जो तो वो कई स्टार्स की तो पूरी लाइफ निकल जाती है पब्लिक इमेज बनाने में, और उन्होंने वो किस्से अपनी जिंदगी से उठा के लाए हैं, और उन्होंने इतने अच्छे से उसे सबके सामने किया है कि he was not afraid of being labeled. और जिस तरह का टर्म, अगर आप उनकी ऑटोबायोग्राफी पढ़ेंगे तो इतने अच्छे पॉजिटिव वर्ड्स वो अपने लिए यूज किए हैं। उन्होंने बार बार अपने को लेबल किया है लिबरल, इवॉल्व्ड, ओपन माइंडेड एंड फ्री स्पिरिटेड, इस तरीके का उन्होंने उन्होंने कभी भी अपने आप को कोई नेगेटिव लेबल जैसे उन्होंने किसी और को नहीं दिया, अपने आप को भी नहीं दिया।
हाँ, सही है, बिल्कुल. Ashuji and Sandeep, if you all haven't read Romancing with Life, I would recommend it, just because not because we're just talking about him, but it is, like Sohani saying, it's a very honest depiction of his life. He has bared his soul. I mean, especially in the first half of the book, it's, with all his love for life and everything, he's also bared his flaws and, whatever, albeit grudgingly, but still they're there. And that song जिसका जिक्र हम सब करते हैं जब हम देव साहब को याद करते हैं, मैं जिंदगी का साथ निभाता गया, अगर आप इनकी किताब पढ़ेंगे ना तो सही में हर चैप्टर में आपको ऐसा शायद इंसिडेंट मिलेगा जिसमें उन्होंने ये जिया है. इतने हार्ट ब्रेक्स उनके हुए, इतनी डिसअपॉइंटमेंट्स उनकी लाइफ में हुआ, एंड आई एम नॉट जस्ट टॉकिंग अबाउट हार्ट ब्रेक्स vis-a-vis women. There were other disappointments also apart from the women. And he's written there, I'm not a man of patience. I don't wait. I move on. That's gone. So if anything has to be learned from his life, this is something we can learn.
Yeah, sure, yeah. And I have read that book. It is one of the first books that I bought after I started working. It had come out around the same time. So I don't remember the book in detail because this was like more than a decade back.
Yeah.
But, like I was mentioning to you on a chat the other day, that book needed an editor in a way, if you look at it, in terms of the finesse of the final product, because definitely editor would have brought in a lot of things, but like his life, right, it did not need intervention, any
Yes.
kind of, whether to make it better or bad, whatever, right, it is his creation, like his earlier films were his creation, his later films also were his. He
True.
both equally
True.
right, he wore them on his sleeve, and he didn't have any, like, he did not see the films the way the world saw it, and good or bad, that's how he was. That's how the book is. Some of the things that still remain from that book with me is, of course, the stand against emergency that he took, and that was truly brave of him to do that. But also, like you just mentioned, right, whether there is talk about his romance with Suraya, or his heartbreak related to Zinataman, or probably the English guide not working, becoming as huge as he wanted it to be, he moves on in the next chapter.
Yeah.
He moves on, and sometimes I think, if my memory serves me right, by the end of that chapter itself, he says like well, I'm Dev, I move on.
Yes.
Right, it's gone.
Yes.
Next film.
Oh yes. Next thought, next film, next script.
That's it. It's not just admirable, but also something to be learned from, like you mentioned earlier.
That is one thing to learn from this man. A life well lived. Sorry, Ashuji, you were saying something.
Yeah, so I was just trying to draw something from what Suhani said, where she said that he traveled in Deccan Queen from here to Pune just to be amongst his fans and so that he can, share space with his fans, his people, his whatever. But it also goes to show another thing, how connected he was with the with the people, with his people who saw his films and whatever, and their problems, and that got reflected in his films as well. And as a result of which, if you're making a film for your own people and you're not connected with your own people, then who are you making the film for? And the moment you make the film for the same set of people that you've been connected to, the chances of you being accepted is that much more. So उनकी फिल्मों को चलने का कारण भी ये हो जाता है कि वो अपने लोगों से बहुत कनेक्टेड थे, रूटेड थे, कनेक्टेड थे, और उनको पल्स पता थी लोगों की कि क्या है, जो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है समझना। अभी मैं आज के दौर के साथ कंपेयर करूंगा नहीं, करना भी नहीं चाहिए, बट मैं सिर्फ ये बताना चाह रहा था कि ये बहुत बड़ी बात है कि अपने लोगों को समझना, उनके साथ रहना, उनकी तकलीफों को समझना, और फिर उनके लिए एक एंटरटेनिंग फिल्म बनाना। ये एक बहुत अच्छा क्लासिक मिक्स है अपनी पिक्चरों को चलाने का।
जी बिल्कुल। अब थोड़ा सा मैं चाहती हूँ कि हम सब, जितना भी समय हमारे पास बचा हुआ है, उनकी फिल्मों के बारे में जरा बात करें, एक के बाद एक, जो फिल्में हमारे जहन में रह चुकी हैं, चाहे हमने उनको रिसेंटली देखा हो या नहीं देखा हो या बचपन में देखा हो। अगर ऐसी कोई फिल्म है जिसके बारे में आप बात करना चाहते हैं, संदीप, सुहानी, आशु जी, तो हम उसके बारे में बात करेंगे, और उसमें जो किरदार देव साहब ने इनैक्ट किया है उसके बारे में थोड़ा बात करेंगे। तो मैं आपसे शुरू करूं, संदीप।
सर, तो नली जी, मैं तो सबसे पहले बात करूंगा अबाउट देवानंद परफॉर्मेंस, विच इज माय एब्सोल्यूट फेवरेट। जो जो मैं बहुत ज्यादा चाहता था कि अभी जो रेट्रोस्पेक्टिव हुआ देवानंद का, आई विश दैट they would have played that film.
Yes.
But nevertheless, it also gave me opportunity to revisit it for the nth time. But this is a film called Bazi.
Oh, yes.
Right, and it has been credited, as the film that kind of created Bombay Noir and all of that. But Bazi is a really interesting film for me from a couple of points, right? So अगर आप देखें तो बाजी, हम वक्त में थोड़ा पीछे चले जाए तो 1951 की फिल्म है
जी,
और ये नवकेतन के बैनर की फिल्म है।
जी।
एंड नवकेतन was not like नवकेतन of 60s then, right? This was just the second film. उन्होंने सिर्फ एक ही फिल्म बनाई थी इससे पहले, अफसर।
अफसर।
और उससे भी बहुत बड़ी बात यह है कि देवानंद was not the Devanand that he became towards the end of the 50s or mid 50s, whatever, right? He was not the biggest star on the horizon. That was to happen 4 or 5 years back, but he was still an upcoming star who had probably seen success with film like Ziddi, but ऐसा कोई बहुत बड़े स्टार वो नहीं थे। But even as an upcoming star, look at his vision and his guts, like most things he did in his life later on, right? For him to take the risk of starting his own banner. Yes, he had his brother Chetan Anand, who he could rope in as a director, not denying that. But again, Neecha Nagar is 1946 and Afsar was 50, right? And Neecha Nagar, although it went to Cannes and all of that, it was not a box office success. So he was still taking a risk. And we don't want to compare, but if you can think of any other actor who has come from the outside, not from the film family, but is setting up his own production house and putting his money where his mouth is, right? He's betting on himself. That's a very big thing to do.
Yes.
And he is not doing it, especially if you think of Bazi, right? Think what big a risk it is. He had given a word to Guru Dutt, and he gave him a chance to direct. How did he know? There was no way of him to know what Guru Dutt's true capabilities were. Yes, they would have discussed, they would have spoken about films. I think he's mentioned about Gurudutt also in his biography, probably.
Yes.
But then it's still a big bet. You're putting your money on it. And Bazi is not a romantic film. He is playing a man with gray shades. He's playing a character who's on the wrong side of the law, right? He's a typical noir hero in that,
Hmm.
right? The James Cagney of the world, if you will. Although he later on became or started to get compared with another star, Gregory Peck, but I've always felt Bazi was one of his finest performances because the mannerisms had not set in by then. He was still experimenting with his style of acting, and his looks, his swagger were used best by Gurudutt in that film. I still remember his introduction shot from the first watch, not even from a recent one. The way he's introduced, again, that is yes, of course, there is a nod to the 1930s noir films, but doing it in the Indian context, and Devanand just pulls it off. And he's playing a gray character. Now there have been a lot of talks of later year actors experimenting with characters that have gray shades. Devanand did it like way back. So and since we mentioned songs, and you can never take away Devanand, the songs that Dev Saab acted in from his films, or when we talk about him, but Bazi is very interesting for me because this is a Devanand who did not have his mannerisms and his style yet. He was not he did not have the persona that carried on his later songs. And there are two songs in particular in Bazi that I would like to briefly mention here. एक तो बहुत ही पॉपुलर गाना है गीता दत्त जी का गाया हुआ, जो गीता बाली पे फिल्माया गया था, वो है तदबीर से बिगड़ी हुई तकदीर बना ले. And there is another song that comes a little early in Bazi, not very famous, but it's like it goes शर्माए काहे घबराए काहे. दोनों ही गानों में, why I find these songs interesting is Devanand has no lip syncing at all to do in these are female songs, but his reactions in these songs is what is very important, because this is a guy who's a card sharp, who plays small bets at a gully level, whatever, and he's suddenly being enticed into the big bad world of gambling. And these songs come at very important junctures when it comes to his transition into this world. And so the doubt in his mind, the apprehensions he has, and how he slowly gets rid of the apprehensions is captured through his reactions in both these songs. More so in Tadbir Se Bigdi Hui Takdeer Bana Le, but yeah, even the other song. And just the way he plays first poor person who had seen better times, as they tell about him, but when we see him, he's still a poor person, and how he makes money, the changes he goes through, and there's a nice little character arc there that is very interesting. So Bazi is one film, and also because you can see signs of the filmmaker that Gurudutt will be when you look at Bazi.
Yes.
So, other films also in the subsequent period, Jal, CID, of course, which I revisited again in the on the big screen, thanks to the retrospective. A slightly uneven film compared to Bazi, but still fun nonetheless. And these ones, and then later on, of course, there is a Tere Ghar Ke Samne in between, and then there are other films in between, Munimji and so on and so forth. And towards the end of the 60s, like this, probably 69, 70, right? He had those Goldie films. Actually, even before that, so Tere Ghar Ke Samne, then Guide, and tons of literature exists on Guide. Everybody and their uncle has seen the film and spoken about the film. So I would not talk a lot about Guide, brilliant classic though that is. But the later Goldie films like Jewel Thief and Johnny Mera Naam, Even if you might find one or two scenes dated, if you look at it today, or might maybe unintentionally funny. Jyotif not so much. Jyotif has a much better or tighter screenplay, I would say. Johnny Mera Naam, slightly a couple of those boxing scenarios might evoke a chuckle here and there. But very interesting films if you consider the time that they came in, and the right combination of Dev Anand the star, his swag, his style, playing the urban guy, right? Which he was. He was a very urban character that way, and Goldie's filmmaking. So yeah, for me, 1951 to about 1970, from Bazi to, let's say, Johnny Mera Naam, that rounds off my favorite phase of Dev Anand. And whenever I go back, also I go back to films made in this particular time period. I don't venture beyond the 1970s.
Yeah. Sandeep, you spoke in detail about Bazi, and you had written a blog on his 100th anniversary on September 26th. Did you release it on his birthday? You did, right?
Yeah, I did.
Right. So when you made that comment, I also revisited Bazi. And, I remember thinking that who advised him, or from where did this idea come from for him to change his style and become this man without bones in his body, his knees bending, his hands flapping all over the place? Because in Bazi, like you rightly said, there's none of that. And it is such an engaging film. He's so good in it, so good in it. It would also be one of my favorite ones. I'm not going to add to what you've said. I agree with everything. There's just one thing, Suhani and Ashuji, that there are very few films, and I think he has written this in his autobiography as well, that he was so shy that his shirt used to always be buttoned up to his neck. Even in his youth, he was not one of those men who would leave his shirt buttons open till his midriff and stuff like that. It was not a habit. But so Bazi is one of those films where he's just had a shower, or not a shower, a bucket bath, and Kalpana Karthik's character walks in, and then he's trying to hide himself. So this is one of those films where he doesn't even have a towel to cover himself. So this is a film in which you see Dev Anand's front and back bare chested. So that was interesting. In other films like Kalapani, and there's another film also where he's just got a towel around it. Even in Hum Dono, when he's the major, not the captain, not the major, sorry, the younger version of Dev Anand, when he's brushing his teeth and his orderly is there and stuff like that, he's got a towel. But he was a man who never liked to show off his body. But in Bazi, I guess it was the first time. So you see his front and his back. So that was wonderful. And I agree with Sandeep that it was one of his absolutely best performances. It was. It will be, after Guide, I think it will be his best performance. Coming to you, Suhani, for your choice of films that you wish to talk about Dev sir.
So, Sandeep chose a wonderful film to begin with, Bazi. And there's one more film which followed Bazi. I think it was once again Guru Dutt and Dev Sahab teamed up for Jal, in which Jal he played out and out a negative character. There's nothing right about the character the protagonist he portrayed in Jal. And as Sandeep said that, you know, I think if I'm not wrong and if I have heard it correctly, it was one of the earliest anti-hero film, Jal. And the way we gave credit to, the actors that followed the steps of Dev Anand, they collected all the acclaim and applause from the audience for portraying Grey Shade. But Dev Anand had done it back in 1952. Of course, it was an outcome of a genius friendship and, a collaboration between Dev and Guru Dutt. And there are so many films to talk about. So when I was rewatching all the films of Meena Kumari, then I watched Tamasha. in which they had come together. I think after Ziddi they were paired together in Tamasha, if I'm not wrong. Is there Meena Kumari in Ziddi too, Nalini ji?
I've missed Ziddi. If I've seen it, I've seen it in my childhood. So I don't have too many
Yeah.
memories. Sandeep, help us here.
No, it has Kamini Kaushal, if I
Family Kaushal.
remember right.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So in Tamasha, he portrays, the typical rich brat who is a foolish guy who, you know, is has inherited all the wealth of his family, but has no sense of right and wrong, has no sense of people, and he's in affair with what we call today as gold digger women, and his family wants him to get married to Meena Kumari, and it's a comedy. And both Dev Anand and Meena Kumari have excelled in that comedy. They have performed so well. And Dev Anand has, acted in a very, what should I say? I mean, he keeps on nagging and whining throughout the film, and it's a very typical story. He doesn't, realizes the value of a girl like Meena Kumari. Only later he understands, and they have a happy ending. But he was so cute in that film too, very very cute. And one of his earliest films, I think it was around Jal 1952, similar. And and then, as Sandeep mentioned, I would like to say that I feel that personally, um, amongst the trinity of Raj Kapoor and Dev Anand and Dilip Kumar, of course, Dilip Kumar he's the supreme. There's no comparison. But the kind of choices that Dev Anand made were very versatile. He played a lover boy. He played, a morally corrupt man. Then he played, kind of a nomad, and then an army personnel, doctor, guide, whatnot. His Actually, in terms of choosing the characters and filmography, I personally feel that he was the most versatile, and he actually experimented a lot with the kind of characters he portrayed, which we keep on seeing, seeing in even in the later stages of his career. So it begins with comedy, and then Bombay Noir, as Sandeep mentioned, then romance, college romance, paying guest, Tere Ghar Ke Samne, and then it grows into more evolved characters with guide, and Tere Mere Sapne is a wonderful film. It's a
Yeah.
wonderful
Oh, it's my favorite.
underrated film which often gets unnoticed when we talk about Devanand's filmography. But again, a superlative combination of both the brothers, Goldie Anand and Dev Anand, and it's a lovely story, depicting the moral dilemma of a medical practitioner, a doctor who's caught up between his principles and the all the kind of vices which the world is offering him in terms of wealth and you know all the correct practices and all. So it's once again a very important film which makes significant remarks on the medical system of the country. And when I'm mentioning this, I mean to say that he always chose the topics which were important and through which he wanted to say something, or he wanted to pass on some kind of message in a very entertaining way. So, if we look superficially, it will look a filmography of, very mostly, what should I say, ordinary choices, but they weren't. And he has amazing what should I say, stories and screenplays in his kitty, and Tere Mere Sapne is one of them. And even Hare Rama Hare Krishna, the whole story behind conceiving this film is so interesting.
Yes.
He was visiting Nepal and he spotted, few people, few hippies, and how he spun the story around. And he actually met a girl whose name was Jazz, or Jesse, and after whom he modeled Zinat Aman's character.
Yes.
So there are so many, stories. What should I say? There are so many anecdotes of his real life and his real encounters through which he gave some remarkable stories. One such film which might have not excelled is Prem Pujari, and I personally like the philosophy of Prem Pujari because it is anti-war and it talks about a man who doesn't want to take up, the arms, and he wants to just roam around the खेतों में उसे घूमना है और उसे तितली पकड़ना है और उसे रोमांस करना है, लेकिन किसी मजबूरी में उसे हथियार उठाने पड़ते हैं. लेकिन जो प्रेम पुजारी का उन्होंने फिलॉसफी जो उन्होंने उसके थ्रू दिखाई थी वो मुझे बहुत पसंद है. और इनफैक्ट ये तो बहुत किस्सा मशहूर है कि प्रेम पुजारी के प्रीमियर पे विजय आनंद ने कह दिया था कि ये फिल्म अच्छी नहीं बनाई है आपने. और he was there when he moved on, and so इस तरह की फिल्में हैं. और मैंने उनकी लेटेस्ट स्टेज की कोई फिल्में नहीं देखी हैं, लेकिन I'll sum it up by saying कि Dev Anand was a versatile actor. Although मैं बहुत रिस्क के साथ ही बात कर रही हूँ, लेकिन कभी भी देव आनंद को बहुत ही महान अभिनेता के कैटेगरी में नहीं रखा जाता है, क्योंकि he was known more for his style and his personality and his attitude and his charm, जिससे मैं बहुत एक अच्छा what should I say किस्सा derive करूंगी later इस discussion में. लेकिन for the kind of choices he made and the kind of scripts he supported, he definitely contributed a lot to Indian cinema
Absolutely.
through them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think this is the right time. Hello, listeners. Hope you're having a good time listening to this podcast. But since we're talking about Dev Saab, I just wanted to say, for those of you who haven't yet heard it, we've done a wonderful podcast, Saurabh Nair, Ashitrika, and myself, on the film Guide in detail, and what we think is wonderful. And we got some lovely feedback about it. So please do listen to that. And there's another podcast that we've done on the genius of Goldie, Vijay Anand, in which a lot of these things were covered. And Suhani just spoke about Tere Mere Sapne. It's my favorite film of Vijay Anand after Guide, So we've spoken about that in that podcast as well. And I just wanted to, before I come to Ashuji, I just wanted to bring this and see what you all have to say about this. I also revisited a couple of his films, not all, of course, recently. And Sandeep, since you remember Bazi so well, when they have the court case and everything about the murder, remember?
Yes.
All right. So in that, he takes a stand not to say anything, right? He doesn't
Correct.
Anybody. He protects that person. And he has no dialogue in the court. They keep asking him, kuch bolo, and all these people, kuch bolo, to wo bolte nahi hai. और he prefers कि मुझे फांसी हो जाए, ठीक है ना. तो उस वक्त चाहे मुझे लगा, because I've revisited, कि ये जो है ना, I was seeing shades of what was going to come in the future, because there's another film which you all can talk about in detail. I'm just putting it out there. काला बाजार. काला बाजार में भी ऐसे ही एक कोर्ट केस होता है, वो जेल जाते हैं फिर सब, और वहां पे उनके ऊपर एक शॉल डालते हैं सफेद कलर का. और जब मैं वो फिल्म दोबारा से देख रही थी तो मुझे लगा कि जिस तरीके से उनका लहजा था और जो देव साहब कह रहे थे, एंड द वे ही वाज इन काला बाजार, ही inspires all these young boys, these criminals, to change their ways. And then there are scenes where he's got, and that's why Vijay Anand, and he's got a shawl. It kind of reminded me of what was to come in Guide. Did that feel like that for you?
Not exactly of that, but what you see in Bazi, the kind of protagonist roles or templates that Dev Anand took on a little later in films like Guide and others, where you say he is not the uh, it's not the typical macho, grab the villain by his collars kind of a protagonist. He also did that in certain films, but the ones where it worked were just like Baji, right? Where is a little more, uh, in the sacrifice mode, or
Yeah, what I'm trying to say
yes,
is that it was almost at a spiritual level, especially in Kala Bazaar. It's almost at that spiritual level where he takes a stand and says, "No, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to implicate anybody." In Bazi also and in Kala Bazaar, he prefers to go to jail, and
right.
Vijayanand has put a shawl on him. Anyway, that was just something that I remembered and I wanted to talk about. आशु जी, आपके पास आते हैं. आप किस फिल्म के बारे में बात करना चाहते हैं देव साहब की? एक या दो या तीन?
मैं एक फिल्म के बारे में बात करूंगा, तो मैं फिल्म के बारे में बात करने के पहले मैं कुछ चीज ऐसी बोलना चाहता हूँ कि
जी,
मतलब आप अगर एक कोई फिल्म देख रहे हो, तो आपको एक फिल्म में क्या चीजें चाहिए होती हैं देखने के लिए कि फिल्म अच्छी, कहानी अच्छी हो, परफॉर्मेंसेस अच्छे हो, गाने अच्छे हो, रिलेशनशिप हो, कोई मैसेजिंग हो। ये सारी चीजें अगर आपको मिल गई फिल्म के अंदर, तो आपको लगता है कि आपने फिल्म देख करके एक एक अच्छा इन्वेस्टमेंट किया है टाइम का, and you don't mind watching the film. So such films become successful, films become memorable, and they stay with you for a long period of time. मैं जिक्र इस फिल्म का पहले भी किया और अब मैं फिर बोलूंगा कि मुझे जो फिल्म में जिसके बारे में बात कर रहा हूँ वो है हम दोनों। इसमें सारी चीजें मिलती है। मतलब जैसे मैंने कहा कि वन ऑफ द फर्स्ट फ्यू फिल्म जिसमें मैंने डबल रोल देखा, पहली फिल्म ऐसी देखी जिसमें डबल रोल है लेकिन दोनों भाई नहीं है, दे आर नॉट रिलेटेड टू ईच अदर।
जी,
पहली फिल्म, मतलब ऑफ कोर्स उस वक्त के दौर पे जो फिल्में जो थी, वो अगर आर्मी मैन है या आर्मी का, तो आर्मी के लिए रेवरेंस इतना ज्यादा था, इज्जत इतनी ज्यादा थी कि वैसे ही अगर कोई प्रोटैगनिस्ट या कोई कैरेक्टर आर्मी वाला बनता है, तो आपको वैसे ही एक जुड़ने को मिलता है फिल्म के साथ, एक लगाव हो जाता है फिल्म का। यहाँ पे दोनों ही, कैप्टन भी और मेजर भी, दोनों वही के हैं। एक एक कैरेक्टर जो है वो गायब हो जाता है, मिसिंग इन एक्शन है, प्रिज्यूम डेड है। दूसरे को बोला जाता है कि तुम जा करके बोलो उसके फैमिली में कि जिंदा नहीं है, ही इज प्रोबेबली नॉट अलाइव, व्हाटएवर। उसको मिस्टेक किया जाता है फॉर द मेजर। अब वो, he sees the house, he sees the mother, he sees the family, he doesn't have a heart to tell them that the major is not alive, the major is not there, but he has his own life, he has his own girlfriend. He's caught in this whole situation of what to do, because the girlfriend starts thinking that this man is having an affair with the wife. The wife starts thinking that he's gone outside the marriage and has got interested in somebody else. And in the meanwhile, you have the original major coming back. He's alive. He's handicapped, and he comes back and he sees uh, the captain living in the house, and he thinks that he's got a relationship with his own wife. और फिर उन दोनों का एक टेम्पल में कॉन्फ्रंटेशन होता है। मतलब आप एक एक किरदार के अंदर कितनी जिम्मेदारी डाल सकते हैं आप, परफॉर्मेंसेस में, सिचुएशंस में, एक एक अलग अलग कॉन्ट्रडिक्शन के अंदर किस तरीके से अपनी खुद की, मतलब एट द एंड ऑफ इट, दिस कैरेक्टर, द कैप्टन का जो कैरेक्टर है, he has nobody to share his feelings with. He feels alone. He feels nobody understands me. And what do I do? इतना सारा, जब आप इतनी सारी चीजें एक फिल्म के अंदर डाल देते हैं, तो ऑब्वियसली जो जो ऑडियंसेस है, they start getting attached to the emotion of every single situation that is portrayed, and it is done so brilliantly, honestly, and with such earnest temperament, that you get attached to the film immediately. So you are no longer a third person when watching the film. You become part of the film, you become part of the journey, you become part of the whole story, the whole universe, and you adopt the character as your own. So you smile with him, you laugh with him, you cry with him also. And the dichotomy that he goes through, I think it is one of the most brilliant films, brilliant performances, and कहानी जो थी वो विजयानंद साहब की, मतलब there are three writers, but विजयानंद साहब, तो imagine you can have such a cross section of emotion coming from somebody like a Vijay Anand who understands the complexity of a relationship and then is portrayed like this. Of course, the film was produced by Dev Anand himself, but from paper to celluloid, उसको इतनी क्लीनली लेकर के आना और ऑडियंस तक वो पहुंचाना, इट इज ब्यूटिफुल. फिर आप कर लो बातें गानों की, अल्लाह तेरो नाम, ईश्वर तेरो नाम, मतलब इट्स एन एवरग्रीन सॉन्ग. मैं जिंदगी का साथ निभाता चला गया, अभी ना जाओ छोड़कर के दिल अभी भरा नहीं, मतलब कितना रोमांस है इस गाने के अंदर. सो आप एक के बाद एक गाने देखेंगे तो यू लाइक द सॉन्ग्स ऑल्सो. कभी खुद पे, कभी हालात पे रोना आया. ऑफ कोर्स गाने भी सिचुएशनल है, गाने आज भी अगर आप सुने तो आपको लगता है क्या बात है गानों की. तो एक फिल्म के अंदर आपको जो जो चीजें चाहिए एज एन ऑडियंस, एज अ व्यूअर, this film has everything, and it leaves a great impact on you.
और इसका एक अच्छा पिच भी है. आई थिंक वो अगर किसी ने देखी नहीं है तो डेफिनेटली वॉच इट. आशु जी, हम दोनों के बारे में आपने विजय आनंद का नाम लिया तो मैं कहना चाहती हूँ स्क्रीन प्ले उन्होंने लिखा, कहानी भी उनकी थी और गोस्ट डायरेक्शन भी उन्होंने ही किया था. सो कमिंग बैक टू देव साहब्स promises, like I said right in the beginning, he used to make these promises from the core of his heart and then stick to it. And he had promised Amarjit that he is going to give him a film to direct. And right in the beginning, this is in Goldie Saab's book. Uh, uh, if you've not read it, do read it. That Amarjit was all over the place a little bit because, he didn't know how to direct. So it was Vijay doing come to the rescue. So it has been directed by him. His name is not there. And
Yeah.
And you spoke about Hum Dono and about the songs and everything. It's so, वो जो अभी ना जाओ छोड़ के, वो तो रोमांस है ही. बाद में आशु जी कितनी एम्पैथी है ना उस गाने में, जब वो साधना उसका सैड वर्जन गाती है, जब माँ की तरह उसका सर दबा रही है और सहला रही है. मुझे रोना आता है वो देख के. और इसमें कितना, माय गॉड, व्हाट अ सीन दैट इज. आज की डेट में अगर ऐसा सीन होता तो शायद हम लोग कहते ऐसा कभी हो सकता है क्या. तो देव साहब जो कैप्टन है वो वापस आते हैं, अब वो मेजर बन चुके हैं. वो वापस आते हैं और घर जाते हैं तो he doesn't find his mother there. And then Sadhna comes and then we know the suspense is, it's not a suspense, you've guessed it, that the mother is no more. And the minute he realizes, Ashuji, that the mother is no more, he's suddenly bitten by this sense of duty towards the other family. And she says, where are you going? He says, I don't know what the dialogue is. Suhani will know or you will know that he says, I have to go and tell another mother. One mother.
That he's lost his son.
Yeah. I've lost a mother, but I have to go and inform the other mother that she's lost her son.
Nalini ji, that, sorry to interrupt, but the dialogues were written by Vijay Anand. एंड बहुत ही शानदार डायलॉग्स हैं हम दोनों के. मतलब वो फिल्म सिर्फ और सिर्फ डायलॉग्स के लिए देखी जा सकती है
जी.
और वो फिल्म ऐसी है कि आप एक बार देख लेंगे. मुझे लगता है आज के दौर पे, मैंने बहुत पहले देखी, मैं तो छोटा था जब देखी है, उसके बावजूद इस किस्म इस कदर इस फिल्म ने छाप छोड़ा है. पर आज भी अगर आप देखेंगे तो वो फिल्म छाप छोड़ करके जाती है. इस लेवल की फिल्म है वो. हम अक्सर मतलब गाइड को, we give the guide the reverence that is needed because it is a cult film and it is proven to do what it does. It has, and it has such solid messaging in the film as well. But मैं ना कहीं अपने अंदर हम दोनों को बहुत ऊंचे दर्जे पे रखता हूँ फिल्म को.
आशु जी, फिल्म की शुरुआत में एक सीन है जब देव आनंद साधना के पिता से मिलने जाते हैं और उस सीन में जो संवाद है एक लड़की के पिता और उसका जो प्रोस्पेक्टिव हस्बैंड या बॉयफ्रेंड आया हुआ है, और वहां पे दो जनरेशंस का टकराव है और उनके प्रिंसिपल्स का, उनकी जिंदगी को देखने की जो नजरिया है उसके बीच में टकराव है. उसमें डायलॉग्स इतने शानदार हैं जब पिता बहुत एक्सपीरियंस के साथ कहते हैं कि जब गरीबी आएगी तो ये प्यार खिड़की से बाहर चला जाएगा और वो कहते हैं कि हम प्यार की सारी जिंदगी बिता लेंगे। और मतलब वो जो जनरेशन की तकरार है वो तब से चली आ रही है, और वहां पे
हम्म,
इतने बढ़िया संवाद लिखे हैं विजय आनंद ने। एंड अगेन, जैसे संदीप ने कहा था कि देव आनंद ने बहुत कम स्क्रीन पर किसी को घुसा मारा है या बहुत ही कोई स्ट्रॉन्ग एक्शन किया है। बट नलिनी जी, when he stood tall against anyone on screen, he looked mighty because he had that personality. He was truly dashing. And when I'm talking about dashing, I'm not talking about the physique or the build up of his body, but the way
his
the way he used to, stand against someone on screen. उनकी जो आंखें और उनका जो शोल्डर और उनका whole body language, it was so intense, and he truly looked dashing and macho in those moments. He didn't need to, you know, fight 1,000 people on screen to look dashing.
Yeah, so honey, but I must confess that even then, when we were all fans of Dev Saab, and it was taken for granted that we love him and whatever he does, we love. But even at that point in time, and even at this retrospective that was held recently, of course, people were watching these films again, and I went and watched all four. But like you said, उनको घूसा मारने की जरूरत नहीं थी, पर सुहानी जी वो घूसा भी स्टाइल से ही मारते थे ना।
बहुत
अभी यही बोलने वाला था कि उनकी जो एक्टिंग है वो अपने आप की एक अंदाज थी, लेकिन उनका घूसा मारने का जो तरीका था वो पूरे स्क्रीन में, इंडियन स्क्रीन में किसी का नहीं था। कि जो उनका घूसा शुरू होता था फिस्ट से, एल्बो तक जाता था, वो पूरा ऐसे गोल घूमता था उनका घूसा।
अभी जूल ठीक में मैंने देखा जब वो पिटाई कर रहे थे, एंड नलिनी जी, द होल ऑडियंस क्रैक्ड अप।
Yeah, we
द
all
होल ऑडियंस जब उन्होंने पिटाई की, मतलब वो जिस तरीके से हिल हिल के और इतना झुक के वो पिटाई करते थे, पूरी की पूरी जनता हंस पड़ी सिनेमा हॉल में। और उसमें
और पता है हम हंस रहे हैं प्यार से, वी आर लाफिंग,
एक्चुअली
ये
प्यार
फर्क है।
से
हाँ, ये फर्क है कि हम उनका मजाक नहीं
हाँ,
उठा रहे, मुझे हमें उन पे प्यार आ रहा है स्वामी जी। जब वो
ट्रू
जॉनी मेरा
ट्रू
नाम में भी कहते हैं ना, पहला नाम भी जॉनी, तो दूसरा
That is fun. He says असली नाम जॉनी, नकली भी
और
जॉनी।
दूसरा भी जानी, दूसरा भी जानी। नहीं, लेकिन मैं बताऊं, हिंदी स्क्रीन में एक्शन करने के लिए जब हीरो खड़ा होता है तो ही स्टैंड्स अपराइट। ये हीरो जब खड़ा होता है तो ये झुक जाता है।
यस एब्सोल्युटली,
हाँ हाँ।
हर फिल्म में।
आप आप वो गाना देखिए ना, खोया खोया चांद में, पूरे गाने में वो टेढ़ा चल रहे हैं,
Yeah.
झुक झुक के चल रहे हैं पूरे गाने में, दौड़ भी रहे हैं झुक के, चल भी रहे हैं झुक के, एंड ही इज लुकिंग सो अडोरेबल, सो अडोरेबल।
Adorable. I took my son to see this retrospective, so I had taken him to see Jewel Thief because he hasn't seen any of these films on the big screen, right? I had the chance to see all of them on the big screen, except I don't think CID I would have seen on Doordarshan or something. But he enjoyed the film. But Suhani ended up asking me, Mama, why does he walk like this? Why his hands like this? Why does he? I said, well, that's a style. And in Johnny Mera Naam, since we are talking about Asli Naam, Johnny, Nakli Naam bhi Johnny, if you remember that scene अभी recently हमने देखी है ना, तो वो कुर्सी पे जब उनको बांध के बिठा देते हैं ना, वो हिल नहीं सकते, तो वो बेचारे मार खा रहे हैं left right. And Dev Saab was very particular, right? You couldn't hit him on the face. That was with makeup. He was he loved his face, and he even said in his book, people used to call that narcissistic, but you were not allowed to hit his face, right?
Yeah.
But so he's sitting on this chair, his legs are kind of bent, and he's tied up, right? But Sandeep, the funny thing, and we all cracked up, was how he freed himself because he doesn't look like the kind of strong man who can free himself. Oh, but he's adorable. Absolutely, you're so right.
And when he wants that guy who's beating him up, right? This 6'3" bulky guy, and he says, "Beta, आज तेरा chance है, मौका है, मार ले." And he actually gets back to him. He gets back when he hits him later, but yeah. But Nalini, when he did not do any of this, even then he looked stylish. I don't know why,
Yes.
what it is that made him, give the mannerisms or take them to that extreme. But अभी तो जॉनी मेरा नाम भी आपने देखी है recently, right?
जी जी.
That opening, or rather the introduction of Devanand in that,
Yeah.
when he lights a cigarette and
Oh,
even before the
jail.
lighter comes to him and we see his face, the audience went wild. And
Yeah.
when you see it on big screen, right,
Yes.
he really has the persona to pull it off, and he casually lights it and he says, ये पुलिस वाले हैं, इनकी ना दोस्ती अच्छी ना दुश्मनी, सो जा. So,
Pilo gussa, he says. Pilo.
हाँ, पीलो गुस्सा, and
Uh,
he says it in a very matter of fact way,
Yeah.
and still looks pretty good on screen.
Yeah.
I wonder what would have happened if the mannerisms didn't take over, but yeah, that's a what if.
Yeah, remember I asked you on the phone, I wonder why or who advised him or where ये अवतार क्यों आया उनके अंदर कि मुझे हाथ हिलाने टांग हिलाने, क्योंकि बाजी ने ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं किया. पहली एक दो फिल्मों में इन्होंने नहीं किया. काला पानी में भी ये बहुत कम है. हालांकि काला पानी में इनकी जो वो मतलब ही बहुत ही हार गए हैं, बहुत ही डिप्रेस्ड हैं, बिकॉज नथिंग इज वर्किंग एंड ही हैज टू गेट हिज फादर आउट ऑफ जेल. तो वहां पे काले कपड़े पहन के उनकी जो शर्ट का बटन है वो मिडरिफ तक ओपन है. So you can see his chest, but there is no real machogiri or anything, but it's just a defeated person. He doesn't know what to do. And there are very little mannerisms in Kala Bazaar also, except in Khoya Khoya Chand. I said something, if you see the earlier part of Kala Bazaar, when he's on that train, when he's following Wahida Rahman to Uti, he sings that song, which is veiled as a bhajan. Apni to har aah ek tufan hai na?
Oh my God, so cute.
Oh
Yes,
gosh. And he's looking out of the
Very,
window.
very cute.
Yeah. वो कोई इतने मैनरिज्म्स नहीं थे, तो सच में मुझे कभी-कभी लगता है
And he looked so innocent in that
yeah,
song कि सच में मतलब भगवान भी 100 गुना माफ कर दे.
सही
इतने वो मासूम और प्यारे लगे उस गाने में.
बहुत मासूम, बहुत
पर
मासूम.
नल्ली जी, मैं बड़ी एक अच्छी सी चीज बताता हूँ
जी
कि संदीप ने कहा कि पता नहीं कैसे इतने स्टाइलिश लगते हैं स्क्रीन के ऊपर.
जी.
Do you see the colors that he has worn on the screen? He has
Yeah.
worn yellow,
Yeah.
he has worn red, he has worn blue, he has worn all
Yes,
the kinds
yes,
of colors that you would not associate with a male hero. He's carried
yes.
those colors, and how?
आशु जी, अमीर गरीब में रेड पैंट्स.
मैं बोल रहा हूँ, ऐसे ऐसे कलर्स पहने हैं उन्होंने कि आपको लगे, मतलब आज की डेट में, अभी तो खैर सब लोग पहनते हैं, बट इसके एक थोड़ा जनरेशन पहले चले जाएं तो गोविंदा यूज्ड टू वेयर दिस काइंड ऑफ क्लोथ्स, but yet you would not believe whether he'd be able to carry it or not. But Dev Saab carried everything.
Yes. You just reminded me of that song where he plays the saxophone in Amir Garib. I love the song, but the picturization, you want to laugh. With मैं आया हूँ.
नहीं, पर उसका वो गाना ना, बैठ जा बैठ गई, खड़ी हो जा खड़ी हो गई, घूम जा घूम गई.
मैं अभी ये एक गाना देख रही थी. मैं देव आनंद के सारे गाने रिविजिट कर रही थी, तो मैं ये गाना देख रही थी जिसमें वो माला सिन्हा के साथ है, और वो एक बंगाली सॉन्ग का रिक्रिएशन है, तस्वीर तेरी दिल में जिस दिन से उतारी है.
हाँ, अरे क्या गाना है, बाप रे बाप.
और उसमें भी वो इतना प्यारा, हल्का हल्का, बिल्कुल उच्चक उच्चक के वो हॉप कर करके, ही वाज नॉट अ डांसर, बट वो माला सिन्हा के साथ कदम मिला रहे हैं और इतना प्यारा डांस कर रहे हैं. और एक और गाना है आशु जी जो कि मुझे बहुत पसंद है, और उस गाने में भी वो उन्होंने बहुत ही, एक तो काफी डेडिकेशन वाला सॉन्ग है कि वो एक होता है ना कि आपको अपने महबूब में रब दिखता है, बस वही है कि एक बुद्ध बनाऊंगा और तेरी पूजा करूंगा. उसमें भी वो माला जपने का एक्ट करते हैं और वो जप जप के डांस करते हैं, वो भी उन्होंने इतना प्यारा किया है. एंड अगेन ये सब जो है, ये मैनरिज्म्स है और ये जो एक्शन है, ये सब अंदर से आता है. ये सब वो फीलिंग भी अंदर से आती है, क्योंकि वो एक्चुअली अपनी हीरोइंस को फिल्म में इतने रिस्पेक्ट से और इतने डेलिकेटली ट्रीट करते थे. और ये सारी चीजें उनके उस परफॉर्मेंस को बहुत ही क्यूट बना देती थी.
Absolutely, Swani.
He made a fabulous pair with Sadhna. I mean, really he did.
He made a fabulous, अरे बट ही मेड अ फैबुलस पेयर विद इवन जीना तमान, ही मेड अ फैबुलस पेयर विद हेबा मालिनी, मतलब आप कितनी हीरोइनों को ले आओगे, ही वुड जस्ट सॉर्ट ऑफ जेल.
with Nutan in those black and white films, right? तेरे घर के सामने, especially
Paying guest.
paying guest, yeah, beautiful.
मेरे लिए क्या है, ठीक है गाना पिक्चराइज अच्छा होगा, बट मेरे लिए जो सबसे रोमांटिक गाना आज तक हिंदी में बना है, और मुझे उसका इट इज गॉट नथिंग टू विद देव साहब, बट मुझे लगता है जो सबसे ज्यादा रोमांटिक एवर मेड इज, देखिए वो गुरुदत्त का गाना, अभी था दिमाग में, चौदहवीं का चांद हो या आफताब हो, जो भी हो तुम खुदा की कसम लाजवाब हो. क्या गाना लिखा है, क्या शूट किया है, क्या गाया है, इतना रोमांस बताया एक आदमी का है एक एक औरत की तरफ, उसका कंपैरिजन इतना ब्रिलियंट है. इट इज जस्ट शेयर पोइट्री, इट्स ब्यूटिफुल.
It
बट
is.
खैर अब सबका अपना अपना टेस्ट होता है, मुझे बहुत पसंद है वो गाना.
मुझे भी, हम लोग को भी पसंद है, लेकिन जो सुहानी कह रही है ना, दिल का भंवरवारा, इसमें जैसे
हाँ हाँ
सुहानी ने शुरुआत में कहा था ना कि देवानंद के बारे में जब आप सोचते हैं, जब उनकी परछाई हम पे ऊपर छाती है, तो हम सोचते हैं कि शोखी, वो गाने में उस गाने में शोखी भी है और प्यार भी है, तो वो जिस
हाँ
शोखी
हाँ.
से उस दिल का
And he has totally surrendered to Nutan in this song.
या
एक तो गाने के लिरिक्स में ही है कि आपका ये आंचल, प्यार का ये बादल, फिर हमें जमी पे ले चला. And the way Dev Anand has acted it in this song, there is a very sweet Sufism and a total surrender to his object of love. And he just wants her to accept and listen, pay attention कि दिल का भंवर करे पुकार, प्यार का राग सुनो रे. And the way he has performed and acted in this song is very, very cute and amazingly wonderful.
Yeah, and before the start, जैसे वो बोलता है ना कि अब इसके at the top of कुतुब he says कि अब इससे ऊपर तो दो ही चीजें लेके जा सकती हैं, पहला खुदा और दूसरा इश्क, and he sings that, and the way Goldie has shot it,
ओह
मनी जी आपने ना बहुत बहुत ही नॉस्टैल्जिक या कहे इवन रोमांटिक मेमोरी की याद दिला. दिस सॉन्ग इज लाइक $1,000,000. I mean, you can't recreate it. जो वो गोल्डी ने बना दिया, and whatever नूतन and देव साहब have done in that song ना, नहीं हो सकता recreate. I mean, all the VFX, all the technology can't.
can't recreate this and cannot recreate the other song from the same film in which जब वो शराब पी रहे होते हैं तो वो नूतन आ जाती है ग्लास में
Oh my
और वो
God.
बर्फ डालते हैं और नूतन झुक जाती हैं, मतलब
कांपती हैं, उनको ठंड लगती है.
ओह, उनको ठंड लगती है, वो झुक जाती हैं, ऊपर से बर्फ गिर रही है, सब ग्लास के अंदर हो रहा है. विजय आनंद साहब के बारे में क्या ही बोले, गाने की पिक्चराइजेशंस, I really till date nobody is better than him. I am saying this without any, nobody, not a single person.
Yeah, absolutely agree, Nandini. Like nobody has shot songs in Hindi cinema better than
Better than him.
Yeah.
Goldie. I would even go to the extent of saying Indian cinema, but let's keep it to Hindi now. And
Yeah.
same movie mein the other song where he's looking
तू
for
कहाँ
the
ये
good one.
बता.
तू कहाँ ये बता. The way it is shot.
Oh,
Like,
Oh my God.
and
Oh my
again,
God.
Devanand
Mm.
carrying the entire song on his swag
Yeah.
and style. Yeah.
संदीप, पता गोल्डी साहब की फिलॉसफी यही थी कि अगर फिल्म में हम गाना डाल रहे हैं उसका कोई मतलब होना चाहिए, जो कहानी है उसको आगे बढ़नी चाहिए, नहीं तो फायदा नहीं है गाना डालने का. वो हर फिल्म में आप देखिए, इवन तेरे मेरे सपने जैसी फिल्म जो इतनी संजीदा फिल्म है,
Hmm.
यू नो, उसमें भी जो जैसे राधा ने माला जपी, मतलब, और जो साइकिल पे वो
हम्म.
गाते हैं तेरे मेरे सपने, उस इतने सारे गाने.
ये
इवन
मैंने कसम ली.
हाँ, और सुहानी तेरे मेरे सपने में जो हेमा मालिनी का रोल है वो एक्ट्रेस प्ले कर रही हैं, उनके भी जो दो गाने हैं ता थई तत थई, और
बहुत प्यारा.
बहुत अच्छे से
हम्म.
उन्होंने पिक्चराइज की,
बहुत अच्छा.
यू नो. तो इन दोनों भाइयों में और चेतन साहब, और मैं कहना चाहती थी शुरुआत में, संदीप आपने जिक्र किया था कि लुक एट द करेज ऑफ देव साहब at such a young age in 1951 to start Navketan Films. I just wanted to tell the listeners that yes, he made decisions in a flash. He saw that Chetan's film is older brother's film had not done well at the box office. Neecha Nagar won an award, and Chetan Saab was a little despondent and struggling and going from producer to make his next film. And without telling him, he just walked out. This is in his book. He went to the production manager, I forget his name, and said, "Can I have an advance?" So he says, "Anything for you, Dev Saab." So he says, "An advance against my payment, which is due to me for this film." And he said, "Yes." So he took out a wad of notes and gave it to him. Dev Saab went to Chetan Saab, gave him the money and said, "Go make your picture. Let's start a production company." And that's how Afsar happened.
एंड नलिनी जी, नॉट टू फॉरगेट, टैक्सी ड्राइवर भी जो फिल्म बनी थी वो that was one of the first films which was shot outside a set, not on a set but outside on locations.
Ah,
And back in those days it was very difficult
yeah.
and very expensive affair. बहुत ही चुनिंदा फिल्में थी जो सेट के बाहर शूट की जाती थी, but still they took chance.
पूरे बॉम्बे में घुमाते हैं, वो 9-2-11 में भी उन्होंने वो की थी ना, कि वो they went to villages and that was all real footage. I mean, they shot a lot and then they had to edit or whatever, but it was all a part of it. So I just wanted to say that he was a man of principle. He was a man of love. He knew nothing but love. And he showered that on everybody. He had his heartbreaks, he had his disappointments, and but he just went on regardless. The English guide didn't work, and he didn't get a distributor for the Hindi guide. His book made me remember that part, that there was a whole lobby in the Hindi film industry against guide. There was a whole lobby, no distributors, nothing was happening. Even the censors, they were talking about ये तो adultery के बारे में, इसमें तो certificate ही नहीं मिलेगा. So he picked up the phone and he spoke to Mrs. Gandhi through her PA, got an appointment, went to see her and said, "Listen, I have this film. Would you have a look at it?" And she sat down. He sat behind. She sat in the front. She watched almost 3 hours of the film. And he said, "I'm not getting a certificate. Censor is not passing, whatever." So she turned to him and she said to him, "You talk so fast." and, he,
Yes,
and he looked at her and said, "Did that irritate you?" And she said, she said no. And then she says, "You'll have your letter of acceptance. Just send somebody to the office." And that's how Guide was released without any cuts and stuff. So he just believed, he prodded on, like a tireless, क्या कहते हैं, कर्मयोगी.
हाँ बिल्कुल बिल्कुल बिल्कुल.
Also, whether it is a college girl or the premier of the nation, it's hard to resist Dev Saab's charm.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's like Rajesh Khanna, they say, from 6 to 60 the women were charmed. It was like that for Dev Saab much earlier.
And he was amazingly chivalrous.
Oh yeah.
And he was an amazing host. He had invited and he had hosted so many international celebrities in his home, Iris Park, and they could never deny his invitation.
Yeah, especially Shirley MacLaine.
या शर्ली मैकलिन की तो पूरी ट्रैवल डेट उन्होंने चेंज कर दी, उनका पूरा ट्रैवल प्लान चेंज कर दिया just by holding her hands.
Yeah.
He didn't let go of her hands, he didn't let go of the eye contact till she agreed that she will change her travel plans and she will change the travel dates. And he very well knew the power of his smile and his eye contact and his personality and his beauty, his handsomeness, and his charm. And he had charmed multiple women throughout his life, and not only women but also men, many men.
Yeah. Suhani, earlier on you had said something about Eve teasing, right, in the songs and stuff.
Yeah.
And how we never minded Dev Saab. You know why? Also, of course, his charm. But Suhani, if you look at the songs, unlike the other heroes, even somebody like Shashi Kapoor has done it. I mean, pulling and pushing his heroines, like वो एक गाना था ना,
दिल भर जानिए.
हाँ, and they've pulled their heroines. They've Babita ke saath. Dev Saab never pulled them. He held the hand, and he never. So there was nothing vulgar or offensive about the way he used to look at his women. बहुत ही बेहतरीन इंसान भी और बहुत ही entertaining actor. This is one regret that I want to share, and it's only my regret. It's not Dev Saab's regret. I always feel, because when I see Bachchan Saab today, I've always felt that if only, with all his charm and with all his talent and with all the fire, if only Dev Saab had agreed to play fathers and character roles in Hindi
Yeah,
cinema,
yeah,
oh, we would have been able to see so much more of this man. Okay, fine, put style in
yeah,
it, but we would have seen. But he wanted to play the lead and everything, or the main character, and
yeah.
so we've lost out on that, Sohani.
No, he did play a father. He played Tabu's father in Hum Naujawan.
Yes,
But still, he was the main hero of the film. He
yeah.
was the lead.
I said this somewhere in the earlier stages of this podcast that he was forever young. He never aged.
Yeah.
Even on screen, they never believed that he's old enough to become a father.
I think in his head he didn't age, Ashuji.
No, no, he didn't.
And he didn't want to age. And okay, what I want to share with you all now is a very poignant little anecdote. And because when it happened, when he passed away, all his fans, including me, of course, he was not here, he was in London, and except for his Sunil, his son, and I think his close family, nobody was allowed to look at his face or anything. And he was, I think they put him in a coffin or whatever. From where that came is when he was at the funeral of Goldie Saab. Chetan Saab had passed away, but he was so close to Goldie, and he was, the flash bulbs and the press were there, and they kept asking him, say something, say something. And then they go, and when the funeral pyre is burning, his thoughts in his head are, this can't be what it is. This cannot be for public consumption. This is not how a person should go. He's written there in his book that I will just vanish. I want to vanish. I don't want to be in the public glare when I'm gone. He didn't want anybody to see him in a fragile state.
Hmm.
Yeah. So at his memorial, there was just his large photograph in Mehboob Studios when everybody got together and paid their respects.
So everybody knows that he had a production house. Obviously, he made films, but he also had a large post-production house, which is basically a dubbing and a mixing studio called Anand
Yes.
in Pali Hill. Lots of his films would then hence, his own camera, his own production house, his own post-production house. It would take care. So, I mean, apart from the fact that lots of people sort of got their opportunities to do a job with him on shoot, even in post-production, even later on for matching, dubbing, mixing, everything, there were people who were employed for that as well. So he actually became quite a stellar person within the industry, as an industrialist only, I would say, within the industry. He took a mantle of constantly getting products out uh, till as long as he probably could walk. He
Yeah.
just kept on making films. He just kept on making films. If he got a story, or if he didn't create a story, if he didn't get a story, probably he weaved one out of real life, and he would turn in the latter ends of his life. He would say that I've got. He made a film called Censor,
Yeah.
and I don't know what he sort of saw within the censor board or whatever practices. He says these are experiences which I'm sharing within the film. So he would bring it out of real life onto cinema in whatever form that he felt he wanted to tell a story. Whether they resonated with the audiences or not is another thing altogether. But he kept on making films. Such was Dev Saab. I think we've covered him fairly. I mean, मुझे लगता है ना 2 घंटे का पॉडकास्ट हो चुका है और 2 घंटे का पॉडकास्ट मुझे लगता है 20 घंटे भी करेंगे तो भी कम होगा. He's got so much in terms of material to share with us and with everybody else with the kind of work. And that is the reason why he was respected so much within the trade, because he did so much.
Before we end, I just wanted to ask you all, actually, I wanted to just share with you all that this movie, Des Pardes, which he directed, I love that film. I love the music in the film. I love the thriller element in the film. I like the fact that Tina Munin came and sat in that barrel with all the beer and the wine and everything. And उसमें एक गाना है जिसमें दो लाइनें हैं, मन को ढक ले गोरी तन का ढकना है बेकार. Do you remember that song? जैसा देश वैसा भेस.
ना जैसा देश वैसा भेष, फिर क्या करना,
हाँ.
छोड़ो रानी आहें भरना, काहे की शर्म है कुड़िए जल्दी करना. मैं then she says मैंने ही करना, whatever that is.
It's such a sweet song. And again, that
Yeah.
film was a social drama in that sense, because he was talking about illegal immigrants. But
Yeah.
if you haven't seen that film, see it, because the thriller element, and Pran, who plays his brother, and Indrani Mukherjee plays his sister-in-law. And when he reaches London, it's a very entertaining film. And Mahmood and Dev Saab and Prem Chopra is there, Ajit is there. They've all done great work. And it's about the pubs in London and the illegal immigrants. And the music of Rajesh Roshan. I think that's the film in which he first employed Rajesh Roshan as a music director, if I'm not mistaken. तो बहुत ही मजेदार फिल्म है वो, which came much later. आपने देखी है सुहानी?
No, I haven't watched Nalini ji.
Watch it. It's a fun film. It's a fun film. And Sandeep, have you seen Des Pardes?
No, like I said, I stopped at Jani Mera
No,
Dil.
but this one I would just tell you to watch, because इसमें अमजद खान भी है, बहुत funny है, और इसमें एक बहुत अच्छा पब का गाना है, संदीप.
जब छाए मेरा जादू.
नहीं, जब छाए मेरा जादू is Simple Kapadia and Lootmar or something. No, yeah, Lootmar. You know, तो नहीं, वो नहीं. और इसमें देश परदेश में एक गाना है ना, तू पी और जी. आशु जी जरा गाए ना वो गाना.
नहीं, मुझे गाना ही नहीं याद है.
तू पी और जी कहता ये जोगी. And they're calling all these foreigners inside a new pub that they've opened. And at the back of the story, there's always lurking this murder mystery. And he's come there to solve that, really. And बहुत मजेदार फिल्म है देश परदेश, जो इन्होंने डायरेक्ट की थी. और जैसे स्वानी बोल रही थी, प्रेम पुजारी की फिलॉसफी मुझे भी बहुत पसंद आई थी, हालांकि फिल्म बिल्कुल नहीं चली. और सुहानी, मैं बता दूं कि उसके प्रीमियर में हमें इनवाइट किया था एज अ फैमिली.
वाओ नलिनी जी.
उस वक्त के प्रीमियर्स जो हुआ करते थे, वो अपने आप में एक मिसाल हुआ करते थे.
जी जी. और प्रीमियर्स की बात करें तो काला बाजार में जैसे जिस तरीके से विजय आनंद ने वो शूट किया था ना, कि वो मदर इंडिया के प्रीमियर चल रहा है, ये 2 का 4 कर रहे हैं, और विजय आनंद had told Dev Anand that these points when these act, you just come into the crowd. So it was like a guerrilla shooting. So it doesn't look like in the film, it looks like they've cut and they've gone there. But it wasn't like that. So before we end this podcast, would you like to just say your goodbyes to the listeners and
Yes.
to us? Sandeep, your last thoughts before we end this podcast?
Yeah. So couple of things I just wanted to leave it out there for our listeners, those who love and admire Dev Saab, and more importantly for people who might not have understood the legend of Dev Anand or gone through much of his work. I would actually implore them to go back and look at his filmography with a slightly open mind. Think of the time in which the work was made, and understand a couple of things, that he was pathbreaking in a lot of ways through the work that he got done with his production house. I mean, this is a guy who, before he turned 30, was one of the biggest stars of the country. And not just that, he had started a production house of his own with absolutely no backing, and given one after another film. And in the golden period of Navketan, which I would again call from, right from Afsar, or let's say Bazi, right up to, Johnny Mera Naam, what came out of Navketan was like, it's a gold standard, most of the films, if not all. And on top of that, the talent that came through it, like Guru Dutt got his chance from there. Raj Khosla learned the ropes of direction from there. Zeenat Aman came from Navketan, Tina Muneem, and so many more. I mean, even Jackie Shroff got a small role, but he started through Swami Dada in that. So बहुत बहुत ही बड़ा, बहुत ही अहम कंट्रीब्यूशन रहा है नवकेतन का एंड देव साहब का हिंदी फिल्म इंडस्ट्री पे. तो in this context, and also think that this is a guy who made films in every decades right from the 40s. So he made his debut in the 40s. From 40s right up to 2010s he has had releases. He was working, he was at the peak. Like कितने lifetimes cross करते हैं उतने decades, and we are talking about a man's working career that spanned all these decades, right? So yes, I mean, we can keep talking about Dev Saab till 7 decades, but yeah, I would like to close it at that.
Thank you, Sandeep. That was wonderful. Ashuji, your last thought?
So they say that, for anything you die with your boots on. He was literally somebody who you could, uh, say this for him, because like Sandeep just said, 70 years to give your life to a film industry. It was literally dying with your boots on. He just continued doing what he liked to do, and he didn't do it for himself, like I said earlier. He did it for his people, his unit, for his industry, and he gave so much. So, legendary. And of course, you can keep speaking about Dev Saab, and there is so much more to speak. And we've just sort of touched the surface when we spoke about a few films. If you get into the detailing of every film, whether even if you start, you can spend a whole podcast on Jewel Thief and the way it has been made. And that you can do with so many films. Every single film could deserve a podcast. But because of restriction of time, and we need to sort of wrap it up here, I think he leaves a mark as a person, as a human being, as an individual, as an actor, as a producer, as a director. I think Dev Saab leaves a mark.
Yes. So, Annie?
जी नलिनी जी, एक गाने का मैं जिक्र खास तौर पर करना चाह रही थी, पहले मेरे दिमाग से ये छूट गई ये बात. सो मेरे लिए देवानंद की सारी फिल्मोग्राफी और सारे परफॉर्मेंसेस एक तरफ, लेकिन जिस शिद्दत से उन्होंने दिल आज शायर है गम आज नगमा है को निभाया है फिल्म गैम्बलर से, वो एक तरफ. और जब मैं परफॉर्मेंस वर्ड यूज कर रही हूँ देव साहब के लिए बार बार, तो एक्चुअली ही वॉज द वन हु बिलीव्ड इन ड्रामा एंड परफॉर्मिंग अ कैरेक्टर. ही डिडंट बिलीव इन जस्ट बीइंग और एग्जिस्टिंग एज अ कैरेक्टर. वो अपने साथ बहुत कुछ ड्रामा लेके आते थे, जो उन्होंने इस गाने पे लेकर आया. और उनके मतलब मेरे लिए उनकी सब फिल्मोग्राफी और परफॉर्मेंसेस से ये तराजू में ऊपर रहेगी. और जिस तरह से हम बात कर रहे थे कि वो ही वॉज एक्सट्रीमली डैशिंग, इस गाने में सिर्फ वो है. वो एक चेयर पर बैठे हैं एक पोस्चर में, उनकी इंटेंस आंखें हैं और उसमें बेकरारी है और उनकी मुस्टैचेस हैं, और वो अपने महबूब को, माशूक को आंखों में आंखें डालकर चैलेंज कर रहे हैं, और एक तरह से उन्हें थोड़ा कोस रहे हैं, बद्दुआ दे रहे हैं कि तुमने मेरा प्यार, तुमने मेरी मोहब्बत ठुकरा दी. और बिल्कुल वो, और माइंडेड की बिल्कुल भी यहाँ इस गाने में सटिलिटी या एक रियलिज्म नहीं लाते हैं. वो अपने पूरे साजो सामान के साथ आते हैं, अपना हैंड जेस्चर और नॉडिंग और स्मोक, और इसमें तो कुछ ज्यादा ही नॉडिंग और स्मोक है. और वो जो चैलेंज करते हैं, क्योंकि एक लिरिक्स में एक पार्ट भी आता है, एक पोर्शन भी आता है कि ये प्यार कोई खिलौना नहीं है, हर कोई ले जो करीब. उसमें वो बिल्कुल उठ जाते हैं अपनी जगह से, क्योंकि वो जो कैरेक्टर है एक्ट्रेस का, वो ये बर्दाश्त नहीं कर पाती और वो उठ के जाती रहती है, तो वो अपनी जगह से उठ जाते हैं, उनके हाथ आगे आ जाता है. ही मीन्स आई चैलेंज यू कि मेरी तरह जिंदगी भर तड़प लो, फिर आना इसके करीब. और इतनी खूबसूरती से, इतने बढ़िया तरीके से उन्होंने ये गाना परफॉर्म किया. दूसरी बात मैं ये कहना चाहूंगी कि अगर आपको जिंदगी जीनी है तो देव साहब की तरह जिए, और he was extremely fearless man, a man with a spine. He always stood for his beliefs, very confident, very he really believed in his subjects. नलिनी जी जब वो आखिर में बहुत ही outdated films में हमको लगता है जब वो बना रहे थे, he really believed in the subject and he believed that he was making something revolutionary and something जो जमाने के साथ चले. Very polished, very English, very elegant, charmer, had amazing persuasive powers and could strike a conversation with anyone and very humble with his fans, according to his autobiography. Truly valued what he got and had amazing command on languages, Hindi, English, Urdu. एंड उनकी ऑटोबायोग्राफी में जिस तरह की वोकेबलरी उन्होंने चूज की है, जिस तरह के इडियम्स उन्होंने लिखे हैं, इतने बढ़िया, मतलब बहुत ही कम आपको इतना पढ़े लिखे स्टार मिलेंगे. एंड ही हैड दोस क्वालिटीज ऑफ एन आइडियल स्टार. एंड मैं यही लिसनर्स को रिक्वेस्ट करूंगी कि आप जरूर उनकी ऑटोबायोग्राफी पढ़ें, क्योंकि बहुत ही कम ऐसी आत्मकथा है जिनमें बड़े किसी बड़े महान कलाकार ने अपनी जिंदगी के ऐसे बहुत ही क्लोज चैप्टर्स को डिस्क्लोज किया है या उनको दुनिया के सामने लाया है. एंड इसके साथ ही मैं आई finish my take on this episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sohani. Sohani, you spoke about one of my favorite ghazals, Dil aaj shaयर है, गम आज नगमा है. वो इतना पसंद है मुझे, लेकिन उसी फिल्म में एक और नगमा है जो मोहम्मद रफी साहब ने गाया है इनके लिए. वो भी इतना खूबसूरत तरीके से, इतने खूबसूरत तरीके से देव साहब ने, मेरा मन तेरा प्यासा, और विद अ कोट स्टैंड, वो व्हेन ही इज ड्रेपिंग द साड़ी, एंड दैट सॉन्ग आई जस्ट, ओह गॉड.
या नलिनी जी, वो गाना बहुत ही खूबसूरत है और एक तो मोहम्मद रफी की आवाज में बहुत ही सुंदर गाया हुआ है वो गाना. एंड देव आनंद ने जिस तरीके से एक मैनिक्विन या कोट हैंगर में एक स्टैचू की तरह बना के उसको DIY करके इतनी खूबसूरती से वो गाना परफॉर्म किया है. एक्चुअली मैं वो गाना जब सुनती थी तो मुझे, आई एम नॉट जोकिंग, मुझे ये लगता था कि मेरा नाम आशा क्यों नहीं.
और सुहानी, तुम सॉरी, मैं ये बोलना नहीं चाहती थी, पर तुमने याद दिला दिया मुझे. आशु जी से ये अलग से एक बात पूछनी थी, हालांकि मैं पूछ लेती हूँ अभी, एक्सेप्ट फॉर वन फिल्म. ओके, जब भी देवानंद साहब की मूछें होती हैं, तो आप लोग मुझे बता सकते हैं कि उनकी मूछें जो है सीधी क्यों होती है? व्हाई डू हिज मस्टैशेस नॉट टेक द शेप ऑफ हिज अपर लिप नॉर्मली, द वे दे आर सपोज्ड टू बी? आई नो दे आर फेक मस्टैशेस. I just want to ask this question. Why do you think that is? Why are his mustaches always in a straight line? They do not follow that. And this ghazal that Sohani has spoken about is so beautiful, but the visual then becomes a little,
Yeah, he looked funny. There's no doubt about it. He looked funny.
yeah, comical. So then I feel bad because even in his old films, even in Hum Dono,
Yeah, he looked funny.
हाँ, वो क्यों मतलब ऐसे करते थे आशु जी?
इसका अंदाजा नहीं है मुझे.
अच्छा जी, ओके. तो मैं आप सबका शुक्रिया अदा करना चाहती हूँ. बहुत अच्छी अच्छी बातें हमने देव साहब के बारे में बोली, क्योंकि उनके बारे में सिर्फ अच्छी ही बातें बोल सकते हैं हम. देव साहब, वी लव यू. We really, really, really love you. My whole family loved you. And I'm sure the ladies up there are having a whale of a time with you, and even the men, because you were so charming. You were so charming to everybody, right from children up to old people. And, Dev Saab, you had said that you were heartbroken when you couldn't go overseas to study further because your father couldn't afford it anymore. And you had 30 rupees in your wallet and you came away to Bombay. While you were heartbroken, we as fans and we as lovers of cinema are very thankful that your journey brought you to this city. Otherwise, we would have been bereft of a star as luminous as entertaining, as lovable, as naughty as you. You had the most beautiful face, and we love you, Dev Saab. For my listeners, I just want to recommend, you've heard the podcast, but there are certain films, if y'all have not seen, I really would urge y'all, like Sandeep has said, visit his films. And this is my choice of films that I would like our listeners to watch. Don't miss them. Starting right from the top, we've spoken about Bazi, that is not to be missed. Johnny Mera Naam, Jewel Thief, Kala Bazaar, it was written by Vijay Anand. The story, the relationships between three people, and how none of them is negative, even though they're confused about who they love and who they don't. It's the only film where all the three brothers have acted, Vijay Anand, Chetan Anand, and Dev Saab. And I would urge the audience, please to revisit it, because like many of Dev Saab's films, Kala Bazaar is also a very progressive film when it comes to relationships. You know, there is confusion between relationship. आज कल हम बोलते हैं इम्तियाज अली ऐसे फिल्में बनाते थे, उस वक्त काला बाजार में कंफ्यूज लवर्स हैं, यू नो, और कोई किसी को जज नहीं कर रहा. उसमें विजय आनंद है, वहीदा रहमान है, देव साहब है, और एक काइंड ऑफ अ ट्रायंगल है. आप देखिए, बहुत इंटरेस्टिंगली और बहुत प्रोग्रेसिव मैनर में इसको हैंडल किया है. द म्यूजिक इन काला बाजार, द म्यूजिक इन ऑल हिज फिल्म्स. Please watch Hum Dono if you haven't seen it. Guide, of course, I'm sure most of the people would have seen it. Tere Ghar Ke Samne with Nutan, again a Vijay Anand jewel. Please watch it. I'm not sure that many would have seen. I think many people have not seen this film, Tere Mere Sapne, which was again written by Vijay Anand, about the medical profession, about which Sohani has spoken today. Please do watch it. These films are available online. Des Pardes is a very entertaining film directed by Dev Saab. It's got great music by Rajesh Roshan. It's a thriller element, and it was the first film of Tina Muneem. Please watch it. It's great fun. Paying Guest, which was directed by Subodh Mukherjee. And this film has Shubha Kote, who always played a comedian in a negative role. Please watch it. And it has got fabulous songs. And I want to mention especially this song, in which Asha Bhonsle or Nutan only says, and Dev Saab is singing, Oh Nigahe Mastana. Do you remember that song? Oh
Nigahe Mastana.
Yes.
देख समा है सुहाना, something like that. तेरे दिल पे चला के हाँ जरा रुक जाना.
And she just does who.
हाँ.
और काला पानी आप जरूर देखिए, राज खोसला साहब ने डायरेक्ट की थी. इसमें देव साहब के साथ मधुबाला है. इसकी भी कहानी बहुत हटके है, और इसमें जो वो एक गजल है जो एक कोठे पे गाते हैं, जब हमने फिल्म नहीं देखी थी और जब भी आप ये गजल सुनते हैं, मुझे एक्चुअली बाद में पता चला जब मैंने फिल्म देखी, आई डोंट रिमेम्बर व्हेन, इट साउंड्स लाइक अ वेरी रोमांटिक गजल. आशु जी प्लीज 2 लाइनें उस गजल की गा दीजिए ना, हम बेखुदी में. प्लीज गा दीजिए.
हम बेखुदी में तुम को पुकारे चले गए सागर में जिंदगी को उतारे चले गए हम. मुझे पता नहीं मैंने वर्ड्स ठीक गाए कि नहीं, बट
नहीं, आपने
मोटा
सही
मोटा
गाया.
ऐसे कुछ है.
बहुत
क्या
अच्छा
बात है
गाया.
आशु जी, बहुत खूबसूरत.
क्या बात है आशु जी.
शुक्रिया, थैंक यू सो मच.
बहुत अच्छा गाते हैं
थैंक
आशु
यू.
जी, मैं तो बहुत एंजॉय करती हूँ. और आशु जी थैंक यू सो मच फॉर दैट. और ये जो गजल है ये कोठे पे गाते हैं, और जब आप इस गाने को रेडियो पे सुनते हैं या कहीं पे सुनते हैं, आप हमेशा इमेजिन करोगे दैट ही सिंगिंग फॉर अ लवर, राइट? बट ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. ये एक और पाथ ब्रेकिंग चीज है काला पानी में, कि वो एक्चुअली अपने फादर के लिए ये गाना गा रहे हैं. उनके जो पिताजी हैं वो काला पानी की सजा काट रहे हैं. तो जब एक कोठे में बैठे होते हैं, नलिनी जयवंत ने ऑलरेडी वो गाना गा लिया है, मोरे बंगले पे नजर लागी राजा तोरे बंगले पे, तो वो ऑलरेडी वो गा चुकी हैं
हाँ
और देव साहब उसका बड़ा मजाक उड़ाते हैं और कहते हैं ये क्या, ये कोई गजल है. So then she comes and sits next to him and she says कि okay you didn't like, आपको तो पसंद ही नहीं आया. तो फिर ये शुरू करते हैं ये गजल और स्क्रीन पे हम देखते हैं images of a jail and just a silhouette of his father. It's so poignant, I tell you. बहुत ही बेहतरीन फिल्म है काला पानी भी. और देव साहब ने मधुबाला के बारे में ये भी कहा है कि वो इतनी चुलबुली थी, इतना वो गिगल करती थी, 10-15 मिनट उनकी गिगल्स शुरू हो जाती थी, so they all had to wait. And he's written in his book that she never used to have too much makeup, she didn't need makeup, she never had false eyelashes, she was just there. So in Kala Pani, Dev Saab remembers it for many reasons, but one of the reasons is Madhubala. And these are my recommendations of Dev Saab's films that should not be missed. And Dev Saab also had some very interesting names, you know, as his characters had some where he was Madan, Johnny to hai hi, फिर विनय, एक में करण थे और रघुवीर उनके नाम, कैप्टन आनंद, मेजर वर्मा. तो it was a plethora of names, you know. He was a star in his own right, but you know सुहानी, जैसे हमारे आज के स्टार्स ना एक नाम के साथ चिपक जाते हैं ना, तो ये देव साहब के साथ कभी नहीं हुआ.
मैंने हाल ही में जूल थीफ देखी अभी देव आनंद फिल्म फेस्टिवल में, तो मैंने जब देव आनंद के कैरेक्टर का नाम विनय सुना तो मुझे बहुत ही सुखद आश्चर्य हुआ, क्योंकि अक्सर हीरो का नाम विनय हमने बहुत ही कम सुना है.
जी जी.
और हीरो का नाम तो विनय होता ही नहीं है.
हाँ, हीरो का नाम विनय होता नहीं, अमर हो सकता है.
या तो वो हीरो के दोस्त का नाम होता है या तो उसके भाई का,
हाँ.
लेकिन हीरो का नाम सुन के आई वाज प्लेजेंटली सरप्राइज्ड.
So this choice of names for him also I found very interesting in all his films. And imagine having a leading man called Raghuveer. For short they called him Raghu, of course. But जब वो in I think Kala Bazaar है. So thank you so much, listeners, once again. We hope you enjoyed this podcast. We've thoroughly enjoyed talking about Dev Saab. We love him. I'm sure a lot of you love him. If there's anything you want to tell us or share with us, please feel free. We might have left out some things, but time constraints do not permit us from going any further on this podcast. So thank you so much. And good night to all our listeners. Good night, Sandeep. Good night, Ashuji. Good night, Sohaniji. Thank you so much for joining me on yet another beautiful, beautiful podcast. Thank you.
Until the next time.
Good night.
Good night and thank you.
Here's to you, Dev Saab.
मैं जिंदगी का साथ निभाता चला गया, हर फिक्र को धुएं में उड़ाता चला गया, हर फिक्र को धुएं में उड़ा